flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, and I think public notification of this meeting has been published, posted, and distributed in compliance with the South Carolina Freedom of Information Act. I would ask for approval of the agenda, but first I'd like to add to the agenda, if we could, Ms. Suzanne Cook from the Sheriff's Office would like to do a presentation, and she also has an action item for us. And so if I could have a council person make a motion to add the Sheriff's Office to our presentations today.
This is Stu. I'll make the motion, and welcome Suzanne, as always.
Thank you, Stu. Is there a second?
I will second that.
Second.
All right. Have a motion and a second. If there's no objection, is there any objection to allowing the Sheriff's Office to present? All right. That has been approved without objection. Let's then now ask for approval of the minutes from our March 15th, 2021.
No, Mr. Chair, we now have to approve the amended agenda.
I apologize. I could ask now for someone to make a motion to approve the agenda.
I will approve the amended agenda, not only to allow Ms. Cook to speak, but to also have the action item as a result of her presentation.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Gerald. So if there is no objection to the amended agenda, do I see any objection? Without objection, then the agenda is now approved. So now we can move on to approval of minutes from March 15th. Do I have a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
All right, is there a second to approve the minutes of the March 15th?
Second.
All right, thank you. So without objection, we'll move to approve the minutes. Is there any objection? All right, the minutes have been approved. I think at this time, before we go to citizens' comments, Chairman Passman, you wanted to make a statement?
Yes, I have been on county council since January of 2019, and Mr. Hervishon and I can attest to the fact since the day we arrived on county council, we have been seeking a means and method of understanding the budget process. It has been a long time coming. We are now getting to the finalization of those kinds of things that we need to truly analyze and approve the budgets from not only our elected officials, but our various departments. And I want to share that having gone through this in my career, a tremendous shout out to our finance department, Whitney, Pinky, Hayes, and everyone that they have worked with in putting this budget together. This is truly a tedious job. We, as council people, are looking to understand everything about it. And when someone asks a question or say, I would like this, I know, having been there, they go through hours of preparation and then have to redo everything and print it out again. So my thanks for what they are doing. We're going to have a couple more questions for them today, so don't take it so badly that we're going to question some things. But truly, we're now beginning to get to where we want in the form of how we want the budget presented to us and be able to analyze it.
That was great.
You're on mute.
Sorry. Thank you, Chairman Passman. Sarah, are there any citizens' comments at this time, or Brenna?
No, sir, I don't see any. There is a phone number logged on, but they aren't sharing their video, so I'm not sure if that is someone.
Is there anyone that would like to speak during citizens' comment that's online right now with us?
The phone number is Miss Rachel. She's having her computer decided to update right as this meeting started, so she's trying to get back online. So if the chairman would allow Ms. Cook to present on behalf of the sheriff until we can get Mr. Richland back in the meeting, I would appreciate that, and then she'll be able to do the financial report at that time.
All right, well, let's move forward then. So obviously there's no citizens' comment. We're going to close citizens' comment. At this time, we're going to skip over item number 7, which is update from Chief Financial Officer. And if Ms. Cook, if you're prepared to go ahead, we'll let you go ahead now if that's something that you can do.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you.
Then absolutely. Thank you so very much for allowing me to present today. I will try and be as brief as possible. The very first thing I wanted to start with, your agenda packet, there was some information on the special revenue funds for the sheriff's office. I was briefly going to touch on some of those just to give you some more information on exactly what these funds are. Pinky has given you some information, and when I go that, I'm just supplementing this. Thank you, Brenna. The very first line item is the fund number 2200. That's sheriff rebanding. This was back when the FCC required the 800 megahertz rebanding project, and this actually started in 2004 and was concluded about 2015. New from last year. It's not new. It has been around for several years. So I just wanted to make that information known, as well as all of the funds that I'm going to talk about are in the spreadsheet. These are restricted in use. There is a special purpose for each one of these, and we cannot use these funds to supplement our annual operating budget. Another example, the 911 fund, it's fund number 2201. It says a $2 million increase. In working with the finance staff, if you do not put a budgetary item on there for fiscal year 22, I would have to come before you in order to receive approval to spend monies on the current project that we are operating, which is the regional ESE network. This will allow us to answer calls for Charleston and Myrtle Beach, as well as vice versa, if we had to evacuate. They can answer our calls as well. We are also reviewing the text messages and video coming into our 911 center. 80% of these expenditures are reimbursable from the state. And I just wanted to, again, give you this information and let that be known. I'm not going to touch on every single one of these. If you have any questions, you can definitely give them to Councilman Lawson, and I will be happy to answer them. One other one I do want to point out, in my budget presentation, fund number 2251, the Victims Assistance Program. Several of these special revenue funds, there are multiple either departments, agencies, or elected officials that actually utilize these funds together. The court actually uses this fund in particular. It's one of, it's a funding source for them. And I only moved our portion of it. I noticed that it was blank on the finance column, and I just wanted to make that known that I only moved the sheriff's office, victims advocate, that the town of Hilton Head was reimbursing us for. I wanted to make that clear. Next, some of the other funds, most of the bottom ones are grants that we have received. These grants, again, are restricted in use, and for some of the items that we have purchased with them, for example, our LEMPG grant, we have bought a lot of PPE for the shelters. So, for example, last year during COVID, in the hurricane season, if we had to shelter and have citizens sheltered, we would have PPE equipment available. We also purchased cots for some of these shelters. Another example that we just received, that council just accepted in their last meeting, the last one, the Paul Coverdale Supply Grant. And I want to point this out that council has already accepted this grant and accepted these funds. So SharePoint is now closed. So if I do not put a line item budget with any other grants that I receive, again, even though you've accepted these funds, currently I'm being instructed or told that I have to go back before you in order to utilize these funds. The next thing I wanted to discuss was the action item. It is, I would like to purchase our tower top amplifiers. We have funding in our rebanding fund, which is not a general fund. It is a special revenue fund. These funds are there to utilize for radio communications. We need to purchase 3 tower top amplifiers to reinforce the radio signals out to the radio, the transmissions into the field. We have included these in our fiscal year 22 budget. If it is voted on today that we are allowed to purchase these amplifiers with these special revenue funds, we can take that out of our general fund budget. At this time, does anyone have questions on this particular item? And okay, not seeing any.
Yeah, no, I don't see any questions as well, Suzanne. And I think that, and just to clarify, the reason we're doing this is we're not sure if this is expected protocol. We're going to get an answer from staff. The finance department thinks that things like this that are in the general fund need to have approval by the elected officials. And obviously, I think Suzanne just mentioned that she does not think that this comes from the general fund. So we're just asking for approval on this, just so we can dot the I's and cross the T's to move this forward until we figure out exactly where the approvals come from. And it might not be something we need to approve, but again, we're going to do it today just so Suzanne can, the sheriff's office can move forward with this purchase.
Suzanne, what is the total cost of the purchase?
It's I'm sorry, $17,500 approximately for 3 of them. So it's a little over $50,000 total.
Okay. No,
it's not general fund. It is Fund 200. It is a special revenue fund.
Okay.
And the importance, Joe, on this is their amplifiers. We run into situations with limited towers when we get into this time of the year when foliage throughout the county is very, very heavy. Unlike the wintertime, the amplifiers are needed for us to have consistent communication with handheld walkie-talkies and different areas of the county where it's difficult because of low-lying areas with heavy foliage creates a problem with radio transmission.
Okay. So I just want to make sure that we have all of the accurate information so that when a member of council moves this, we have exactly the dollar value that is 3 amplifiers that is being purchased from a special revenue fund, not from the general budget. And because of the dollar value, the finance committee can approve this and you're good to go.
Stu, I see your hand up. Go ahead, Stu.
Yeah, just a comment. It sounds like part of our question is whether or not the other elected officials have to come back to council once they have an approved budget. As a practical matter, for the last 17 years that I've been involved, once we've approved the budget of another elected official, they have not had to come back to us for approval. That's my sense of part of the discussion we're having. And, you know, if that's an issue, then we need to address it. But I tend to think that once we've approved the budget of an elected official, they're good to go.
And I agree. I think,
Stu, I got to completely agree with you on that point. Because these funds that we're talking about that Suzanne has put up, they're regulated. They've been approved by council. They're regulated and they can only be spent on specific things such as what we're talking about right now. So having to go back before council on regulated funds, even though they're not general funds or special revenue funds, it's already been discussed. It's already been approved by council. So why are we having to go back and go through the same process to get this thing done, because sometimes there are times that we need to make decisions about these purchases based on these funds, and sometimes we just don't have time for council to meet every couple of weeks, because every couple of weeks turns into 3 weeks, turns into 4 weeks, and then we're behind the curve.
The other part of it is whether or not you really have to do it for the general fund. And I tend to think that we don't if we've approved the budget. However, like with the school board, where we approve their budget and they can go do what they want to, if they are exceeding what the appropriation was, then they have to come back for approval. But I think that's the issue we're dealing with, and particularly whether the general fund has to come back, because remember, that's about a third of our budget. That's an awful lot of transactions.
And I think we're doing this just today, just to have them move forward, and we'll get a definite answer. And Sheriff, you could be exactly right. And again, we'll just validate that in the meantime. But so today, I'm looking for, just so again, they can go ahead without any type of delay in purchases, looking for someone to make a motion to give permission to purchase the money.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, before we go any further, I'm kind of like Stu and the sheriff on this one here. This is really redundant. I don't even know it's redundant, because if we voted no, what does that mean? And so we're just going through an exercise right now of really futility. I mean, because only thing we can do is say yes, but why do we need to say yes to something that's already been approved? So I will probably not vote on this motion at all. I'm not voting against it nor for it. I just think it's something that's not necessary. Thank you.
If Councilmember Lawson, if I could respond to that, let me explain what's going on here. I believe, based on the financing, Whitney's online now. She can correct me if I'm wrong, but I do believe these items were requested in next year's budget. And in order to remove them from next year's budget, the sheriff is requesting that they go ahead and purchase them out of this year's budget. And that's because it's over $50,000. We felt like that might need committee approval. And we will research that. We'll work with the sheriff's office on that so that we don't have to do this again. But I do not think these items are currently budgeted in the budget, in the sheriff's budget. So,
Mr. Chairman,
I'll move the purchase so we can move this along. This is Stu.
Chris has a question.
Yep, Chris, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. I'm honestly very confused as far as where we are right now, because there is no next year budget, is there? So, and if it was already budgeted before, why are we voting on it again? Which I think is the sheriff's point, which I'm unclear on. So how are we moving things from next year's budget when we haven't approved it and we're voting on it, but we're saying that it's already been approved? That's very confusing to me. So that's the first piece. And then the second piece is it feels like we had a presentation there about a number of items that seem to be different between the presented budget and the sheriff's requested budget. I didn't see any dollar values associated with those items. So is that up to us to walk those fund numbers back to the documentation that's in the packet today, or is there going to be some sort of supplementary information? I'm just honestly very confused as far as where we are right now and why we're voting on this.
Can I please explain? I can answer all of this.
Suzanne, go ahead.
Please do.
Point number one, what we are here to discuss and try and to move forward is, yes, with Councilman Rodman, there is an ordinance stating with general fund dollars that we do not, once the annual budget has been approved by council, we do not have to come back before them unless we are going to overextend ourselves. So that is correct with general fund dollars. I'm asking today to spend special revenue fund dollars. And it has been stated that because I didn't have a line item budget in that one particular fund, even though there's at least $200,000 in there, I can't spend $50,000 of it unless I come back to you, even though you historically have already received these funds. So council has already received these funds, and I'm just utilizing them for their specific purpose. So that is different from the general fund dollars.
But I think for Chris's understanding too is that if these purchases are made out of this special revenue fund, now, today, it will not be a part of our budget request for the upcoming fiscal year, because we're already utilizing the funding that's set aside for that purchase. And if we buy the amplifiers, then we're not going to be asking county council to fund amplifiers in our next fiscal year budget.
Correct.
Got it. That was 100% clear and totally helpful. So I'm clear on that now. And then the other piece of it, if you wouldn't mind too.
Okay, just like with the share tenor just mentioned, we do have in our fiscal year 22 requested budget that we put together in SharePoint on March 17th. It's got $54,570 for these same 3 tower top amplifiers. If you approve the purchase today, you can reduce by that $54,570.
Our budget request.
Our budget request. And Councilman Herbershon, what was your other question?
Yeah, you had showed like I guess it was a spreadsheet, but a list of funds and things like that, but I didn't see any dollars associated with those. I see those fund numbers, or I think on the material that's in the packet today. I'm just wondering how I kind of reconcile those two things, the dollars associated with the items that you went over, and then also the packet material.
Okay, the dollars actually, depending, because I'm here today with this particular purchase, because I didn't have a line item budget amount in communication equipment to purchase these items. This is the reason why I'm having to come back before you. Therefore, in order to mediate that, I put budget line items for these funds for fiscal year 22 so that we could make these purchases in a timely manner and not come back to you because you already approved these funds. Also, the spreadsheet is to give you more information. I was supplementing what Pinky has given to you. She's given you a lot of the information of what the fund numbers are, but not really the explanation of what each one.
Or the amount.
Well, actually, she has the amounts on. It's just actually, I don't think you've ever seen these before. So I wanted to give you an education on what these special revenue funds are and their specific purposes that we can utilize the funds.
Okay.
So again, I'll move the purchase with the understanding we'll true up the budgets.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion on the table and a second. Is there any additional questions or comments?
I had one, if you don't mind. Are we going to be able to get that spreadsheet and have that incorporated into what we already have?
I am sure we can. If
You'll have it. You won't have it today, but you'll have it by a council meeting at first reading. Yes, if you approve this today, because this does not require council approval since it's less than 100.
The spreadsheet, it was my understanding, it has been emailed out to you, the one that I have provided. Is that incorrect?
I may have just missed it.
yeah,
It has.
That's
It
good.
has.
it did go out here right after you sent it, Suzanne, probably 11 o'clock. So we had sent a couple things. So it's probably everyone does have it. If they don't, let Sarah know, and we'll get that to you additionally. All right, so
I do have
questions?
Yeah, I do have the one sheet, but I don't have the sheet with the numbers on the bottom. I think you had 2 sheets there, so I did print off the one sheet. The one that had financial committee meeting 5/17/21, that you had everything on there, but you had another sheet there that had some dollar figures on it.
Yes, sir. That is included in your finances packet.
Okay.
That is the budget director, Pinky Harriet.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes,
I'll
sir.
get it. Mm-hmm.
Councilman Lawson, could I provide a little context here? This is Whitney, if you can't see me.
Whitney, we can hear you fine. I know you were breaking
you,
up before,
sorry.
but go ahead. That'd be great.
Hey, good afternoon. I'd like to just provide a little context on why we were asking our sheriff's office. And it's not just them, it's all departments within the county that have funds across all of our various fund types, whether it's governmental or enterprise or what have you. GFOA and best practices require that we have line item budgets for all of our funds, and that does include special revenue funds. I think the reason that this is currently an issue is because in the past, that practice was not employed by Beaufort County. It's my understanding that you guys received a budget for the general fund and possibly some of the enterprise funds, but never for special revenue funds. And in fact, when we received our GFOA reviewer comments this past year for our comprehensive annual financial report, one of the items that we were docked on is that we did not have budgets prepared for all of our governmental funds, which includes the special revenue funds piece. So this upcoming fiscal year for fiscal 22, you will see that we have strived to meet that best practice by asking all of our departments across all of the county to include the offices of elected officials who have discretionary funds, even if there's special revenue in nature, to prepare a line item budget for us this year so that we are compliant with that. And further, our own ordinances require that anytime our fund balance is used, that must go before council approval. And if we don't have a budget prepared and fund balance is being used, then we are sort of dead in the water from the finance perspective when it comes to approving those expenditures. So what we are trying to do here today is shore up ourselves with accountability and best practices and employ that in our fiscal 22 budget. But because we did not have one in fiscal 21, it has been hampering the sheriff's office. And unfortunately, Suzanne in particular has had to, I hate to say waste a lot of her time, but for lack of a better term, she's had to waste a lot of her time this year in trying to work around what was not done last year. And it's not her fault. It's not any of current finance's fault by any means. It's just something that was not done, and now it's being done and it's new. And she was gracious enough to prepare a budget for fiscal 22. And you guys will see some of those requests there today. So I want to thank her and the sheriff's office for their cooperation and helping us work toward that end for the fiscal 22 budget. And in the meantime, thank y'all for taking time today to hear her request out and working with her on this fiscal 21 request. So, and I'm happy to answer any other questions about that, but I felt like some context was needed.
Thank you, Ms. Richland. Is there anybody else? York, I see your hand up. Go ahead, York.
Yeah, just quick. I appreciate that. That makes a lot of sense. So in essence, all we are doing now is approving a line item for the special revenue budget, right?
Yes, sir, because there was not one that was existing. They have the funds available.
I understand, but you need a line item budget, and this is the line item budget right now that we're approving.
Yes, sir.
That makes sense to me. Thank you.
Any other questions? I can't see York. I'm not York, but Stu, go ahead. You're on mute.
Yeah, obviously we're truing up some things if we have to have these. I think we all, Whitney, also need to look at it from the school board perspective as to whether we need it for their special funds, because they run about $100 million a year that flows through the special revenue for the school district. So as you're working it, let us know if we need to include that in their approval.
All right, great. Any other questions? If not, I will call the
Council.
Suzanne?
I have a quick.
Suzanne asking, but I need y'all to understand that the forfeiture account which is the drug seizure account. I mean, those are court ordered funds that come to the sheriff's office, and we can use that money for drug enforcement. That can't be a part of this conversation, because if I get just an example, if drug team task force comes to me today and says, we got an informant that can buy a kilo of cocaine, and I need the money to buy the kilo of cocaine, I'm doing that within 15 minutes. And it's not going to be the opportunity for me to go to county council and ask to spend $15,000 on a kilo of cocaine. Number one, I'm not going to tell you that. I'm not going to share investigative information with anyone. And I'm not going to have that opportunity for me to enforce the law hindered by a request that you have absolutely no say-so over at all, because this is not a general fund account. We enjoy the transparency. All of our banking is with the county, but there are several accounts that we're talking about here, and the drug account is just one of them that is court-ordered, supervised and managed by the state of South Carolina. It just happens to be in the general ledger or with the general ledger of Beaufort County. The easy way to solve that, if you think you have some say-so over, is I will move those accounts and I'll go to a private bank in Beaufort County and I'll open up other bank accounts, which takes it off the general ledger. It shouldn't be there anyway. We're just trying to be transparent in everything that we do. But I'm not going to come and ask you to spend money on a drug account to go buy dope this afternoon at 5 o'clock. And I think you would agree with me.
Yeah, I don't think that's what's being asked. Under the GFOA, all special revenue funds are being asked to have some sort of budget. You have a historical perspective on those drug funds. So if in a normal year you collect $25,000, you can budget $25,000. You need no permission from this county council. It's, Mother, may I spend this money? No, you're just putting it in a pot of money for GFOA purposes. If you gather 25,000 and spend 24,000, okay. If you say you're going to collect 25,000 and you collect 50,000, that's okay too. It'll all be accounted for at the end of the year when the audit is done. So I see no problem with what we are doing.
All right, any other discussion before we move on? So we have a motion on the table and it's been seconded. Is there any objection at this time of us approving the amplifiers that the sheriff's office has asked for? It's not seeing objection. We'll go ahead and approve it without objection. And Sheriff, you're exactly right. We're just trying to move forward, be transparent as you are, and as we do things, clean things up and do things right on our side. We've got a finance staff that is working to do everything correctly. So we want to follow what they're doing. And again, we might find out that we never had to approve this, and we did this so we can move forward. You could purchase it, and we can move forward with what we've got on the table. And hopefully we'll then in the next week or so clear this up, clarify exactly how we operate this, what we do, and how we need to do it. All right, let's move on then. Ms. Richland, if you're ready, move on to item number 7 at this time, which is update discussion and presentation of year-to-date financial statements for fiscal year 2021.
Okay, good afternoon. Thank you, Councilman Lawson. All right, so you'll have before you what we typically refer to as your executive summary. It's your financial report through April 30th of 2021. And if you had a chance to look through it or peek through it before this afternoon's meeting, you will see that there's a few extra pages in there that you don't normally have. And I'd like to give credit to Hayes for adding that extra detail in this afternoon. He worked very hard in doing that. But what you'll see is as we continue to get through some of our major projects like the external audit, the internal audit that we're currently on, and even with this budget process, our time will be freed up a little bit to start expanding the information that we are able to provide to you guys. each month. So I'm really pleased to be able to give you a little more detail than what you currently get. I won't go into all of it this afternoon because we do have a really full agenda, and I know that everyone is really ready to delve into the main point of this afternoon's discussion. But I just want to let you know overall that our general fund revenues are doing really well. You might notice right there at the top that we've collected about $275,000 more than the overall projection for this fiscal year. And if you look at the table below that, you'll see that some of the reasons that might be the case is we are at 99.5% of our ad valorem taxes collected. For charges for services, we are a great deal more than what we budgeted. And the same is true for some of our miscellaneous revenues and just a pinch for our transfers in. What you may see happen as refunds continue to be processed, as individual taxpayers' accounts continue to be reconciled, as payments come through, you may see a bit of a decrease if any of that is due back in refunds to anyone. But as of right now, the general fund is looking really well with the expenditure piece, the revenue piece. Moving on to the expenditure piece, you'll notice that we do have a few amendments and transfers in there that were just line items, interdepartmental things to the tune of about $6,500 or so dollars. We have a modified budget there of $131,646,307. And our expenditures to date, all in plus encumbrances, are $102,931,755. Or said differently, 78% of our budget has been consumed, and our percent of the year completed right now is 83%. So we're trending about 5% overall lower than what we might expect. So that is also means we're in very good shape. And on page 4, we have our graphs that compare the revenue and expenditures from fiscal 20 to 21. And you'll see, much like I thought they would, the revenue on the revenue piece at the top is starting to level itself out. That gap is closing. And again, that was due to the time delay in the ad valorem taxation collection. Otherwise, you would really have seen those two lines very closely mirror each other. And then below that, we have our expenditures. And they're still trending up on a pretty parallel plane there. So all in all, we feel very comfortable with where our general fund is today. On page 5, you'll see some of the expanded detail that I referred to earlier. And I won't go into all of these line items right now, but they are there for your reference. And if you have any questions about what you see this afternoon or even later once you've had a chance to really dig through them, please reach out to Hayes or I, and we are happy to answer any questions you may have. And then finally, on the very last page, you'll see the same thing with the expenditures. So you have by functional area, so whether it's your general government, your public works, your public safety, you'll have each of your departments listed. You'll have their approved budget. If any revisions were made, you'll have the revised budget. Then you'll have the total amount spent or encumbered, and then the variance between the revised budget and the total amount consumed for the year. So I'm really pleased to share that with you this afternoon. That is the general fund in kind of a nutshell and an overview. I also would really love to show you, again, if you've not had a chance to take a peek, take a look in the packet. We're pretty excited to provide for you, I think for the first time on a monthly reporting basis, the enterprise funds. And so if you're not aware, those are your funds that operate more in a business type function. So typically, rather than there being any kind of non-direct or non-direct transaction where it's, everyone's just paying taxes, there's not necessarily equal payment for equal service. The enterprise funds are actually much different in that they operate like a business where it's typically an individual is benefiting based upon a user fee or some sort of direct transaction that they're having. So we have 3 enterprise funds. Those include each of our 2 airports. So your Ladies Island, now named Beaufort Executive, as well as our Hilton Head Island Airport. And we also have our Stormwater Utility Fund for the current year. So those financials are in your packets as well. And we are happy to answer any questions that you may have on those.
Is there any questions for Ms. Richland at this time? I can't see everybody, so speak up if. All right, Ms. Richland, thank you very much. I don't think anyone has any questions. So you've covered that for us. Thank you. And let's move on then to our official agenda items. And Ms. Richland, I think that you are up again. This is first reading of an ordinance for the fiscal year 2021 budget amendment. So the floor is yours, Ms. Richland.
All right, thank you. Also, you'll have in your packet, this is a slight modification of what we presented earlier this year. A couple of you provided some really beneficial feedback for us in ways that you thought we could have made this a bit more transparent, in that we weren't asking for a true budget amendment, which would be an overall increase in the appropriation, but rather more of a transferring between unused or unspent portions of the budget to other areas where they were lacking. So I really want to just kind of bring some clarity to that. The only piece that would officially increase the budget, if we needed all of it, would be the extra revenues generated by the Register of Deeds Office to the tune of about $2.5 million. They're bringing in revenues so much greater than what we ever could have imagined in this market. So they are there should we need them. But the main thing I'd like to focus on is that staff did go back and look at all of our vacancy savings across 24 departments. And we found in our current year, there's going to be a little over $5 million that is not going to be expended before June 30th of this fiscal year. And we have taken those savings and we're asking to reallocate them across all of the uses of funds that you will see in your packet. Many of these were things that were approved at various committee meetings, and at that time, sources of funds were identified. But it was much more efficient for us, rather than bringing forth, 10 or so different line items from committee meetings, just to show you that even though we identified other areas, that we still have plenty of room to absorb them in our budget through the vacancy savings above. So if you take the sources of funds at $7,577,245, you compare that to the uses of fund below of $6,163,000, you'll notice that we have more than enough to cover the additional increase for certain line items that were short. And we actually have about $1.4 million that could be reallocated if needed before the end of the year. But before I ask you guys to sort of take action on this, I wanted to point out that there are a few additions that weren't here when we first brought this to you. I think it was maybe back in February. The new things that you will see on there are really at the bottom. There's 3 of the last 4. There's a parks and recreation facilities and equipment that are on there for things that were deferred for a while, and that Parks and Rec has a wonderful capital improvements list that they were able to furnish. And due to vacancy savings specifically within that department, they would be able to reallocate those if you approve to take care of some capital needs. Additionally, in fiscal 22, EMS was requesting new ambulances and remounts, but we looked at our vacancy savings and said, if you can squeeze those into fiscal 21, we can remove that from the request for fiscal 22's budget. So we've added that here. Additionally, our clerk of court would like to purchase some furniture. So you'll see $150,000 in there. And then finally, the information technology, infrastructure, and equipment was on here previously, but because one of our projects is running long, specifically the InterGov project, I have bumped that up a little bit to $1 million. So that is your total overall budget reallocation, and I am happy to answer any questions that you may have on that.
Anyone? York, Mr. Glover, go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Richland, I saw the 1.7 million for personnel. Is that taking into consideration any improvement, or is that for some other means at this time?
So what that is, some of our departments were having a salaries and a personnel cost shortfall. and others were having a surplus, if you will. For example, a lot of our departments in the public safety area, and specifically Mr. Phil Foot's area with the EMS and the detention center, because of the difficult time they've had in filling vacancies, they have quite a lot of personnel costs that they will not be using this year. Then you have other departments that have particular line items that simply do not have enough in their budget for the current year. So what we are doing is sort of taking them from one area and just patching another department with that. I would like to say that none of the elected officials' departments were touched in this vacancy savings whatsoever. And if you would like to see more of that detail, I'm happy to provide that as well.
Yes, I appreciate that. The other one is that facility at PALS. I'm assuming that's to upgrade or do some capital improvement on facilities that's out there in the community.
Now, I would probably have to defer to Mr. Chuck Atkinson for the specific locations. I was provided a list that was, it wasn't general in nature, but I can't recall off the top of my head all of the various requests that we had. I'm not sure if he's available to talk this afternoon. Chuck, are you online?
Yeah, I'm here. So all of these repairs are going to be repairs and upfits of existing facilities. I have a long list of them. If you want me to read through them, I can. Otherwise, that's what it's for.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Mr. McAllen, go ahead.
Hey, Whitney, I have a quick question. If, with the elected officials' budgets, if allocation was made for additional personnel in July of 19 and July of 20, and there was a delay in hiring for a few months or longer than a few months, is there a way that you would be made aware of that if the hiring didn't take place for, let's say, until the last half of the fiscal year where they were funded for the entire year?
I don't necessarily know that office would alert finance that they've not filled those positions, but surely through our budget monitoring that we're now doing, we would probably be able to pick up on those types of things when we're making our comparisons.
So going forward now, so the only way we could really find out if the monies were given for hiring is to ask them, if the money was given in July of 20, when did you hire those people? And if they say March of 21, then they'd have to self-report that because we have no way of knowing.
We could probably ask HR to run some hiring reports, if that's helpful to you, but otherwise that's not information that I see without asking specifically for it.
Okay, yeah, that's what I thought. So to get that information, we'd have to ask for it, or we'd have to ask someone for it, whether it's the person responsible for that particular budget or if it's internal HR. Okay, that's good. That's good to know. Thank you.
Mr. Herbershon, and then Ms. Howard.
Thank you. I'm curious about a couple items. The first two, the legal fees, I'm curious as to what comprises them. You don't have to give me an answer now, but if we could get that detail some other time, that would be helpful. What is county council distance learning? That's the first one. What does CAI stand for? And the internal audit fees. I thought we had budgeted something like $65,000 last year for those, and I just don't recall if we went over that or not. I'd be curious if you could opine on that.
Sure. Okay, I'll take them in order. The distance learning was actually a grant, and I believe that required a match on art that we were unaware of at the time the budget was prepared. So this is just to cover ourselves with our expenditure piece for that. Hayes, if I'm saying anything incorrectly, please shout out, speak up.
Right, that refraining grant was $200,000 that y'all voted on to help with learning, and we've already spent the first, and we're about to spend the next $100,000.
Okay.
It was unbudgeted last year.
Got it. I was just confused about the county council.
Okay. Yep. The next one, CAI, stands for Culinary Arts Institute. And Hayes, if you want to provide any additional background on that, you certainly can.
The Culinary Arts Institute, so every year we provide a payment to TCL for $800,000, which is our $500,000 plus the town of Bluffton's 50,000, and then the school district 125, and then we get a note for 20 years for the other 125. The revenues in the MCIP aren't doing well. We are hedging our bets on this. Hopefully we won't have to use it, but I would hate to get the end of the year and PCL needed a payment and we didn't have anything in there. So that's why that's there.
Okay, and finally, the question about the internal audit fee. I don't know that we have a sufficient amount overall in our professional services line item to cover both our normal external audit and the additional internal audit that was asked for this year. So we are just trying to fund the difference through this amendment today.
Very good. That was all very helpful. I appreciate that. Just one quick follow-up, but is that internal audit included in the proposed budget, the professional services?
It is not in fiscal 22. If you would like for us to add another amount so that we can do one of those next year, I can certainly add that in.
I personally would, and I think that was the intent when we passed that ordinance 2 years ago.
Okay. All right.
Yep, I agree, Chris. I think you're right. That was something we planned on every year, auditing certain areas. So, all right, Chris, thank you. Great questions. Alice, go ahead.
He asked one of my questions, and the other one I had was Plt Payout. What is that?
Yes, ma'am. That is the, if you recall back around Christmas time, employees were given the option of sort of trading back in their paid leave time. That was the total of the payments that were made at that time.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Are there any additional questions? Is there anyone else that would like to ask a question? All right, no further questions at this time. I'd like to entertain a motion to go ahead and approve the first reading of this ordinance.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
So motion's made by Mr. Passman and seconded by Mr. Somerville. Are there any additional discussion on the topic? All right, we will then call the question to order. Is there any objections to this ordinance? Not seeing any objection. This is approved without objection. All right, let's move on then to number 9. And number 9 on your agenda, approval of the fiscal year 2022 budget ordinance. So I think Ms. Richland, you're up with your staff again, so please take the floor.
All right, good afternoon. Thank you, everyone. I know that this is a highly anticipated item this afternoon, and I'd like to commend not just finance staff, but all of our departments and elected officials' offices countywide for their work in putting this together. This year, it's a daunting task when you have a county of our size and the number of funds that we have countywide, both general, special revenue, debt service, enterprise. There are many. So I'd first like to say thank you for everyone's participation in our process this year. It was not necessarily a flawless one, but we are looking for ways to improve that next year. We will have actually a budget building software so that the aggravation of SharePoint will be a non-issue next year. So we're already thinking of ways to improve upon that. And I know one of the most secretive things that we have kind of kept close to the chest this year was the results of the COMCAST study. And I know that some of our departments felt that we possibly were not communicating enough about the results of that study. But if I may explain the reason for that, I would much rather be the bearer of good news and surprise everyone with what we're able to do than to share details of that study with department heads and then not be able to deliver on those results and have people disappointed. So just want to throw that out there. But with that said, you guys have in your packet, your original packet, a budget provided by Budget Director Pinky Harriet that is very consistent with what you saw at all of your budget workshops. And at the time, you'll recall that we had not yet pieced together the comp and class plan. We're still trimming down our budget, still looking at vacancies, still trying to determine what we could fund, whether tier 1 of the implementation study, tier 2 or tier 3, and on what rotation. So whether we could do a half-year implementation or a full-year implementation. So you will have received from me earlier this afternoon, around maybe 1:15, an email from me for the fiscal 22 general fund budget with comp and class for council. So if you were not able to see that email prior to today's meeting, I can pull that up on the screen and share it with you. The bottom line that I think you're probably going to want to be concerned with this afternoon is what is the increase between what we have been showing you during our budget workshops and the final budget that we are proposing. And rounded, that's about $3.8 million of an increase overall to fund comp and class. You'll remember our initial estimates were between around 4 or so to 6.8. And that actually still held true. But the reason the total difference between Ms. Harriet's initial budget in your packet and the final packet, even though it includes comp and class, is that we were able to go back through and shuffle a few more line items around and look a little bit harder at which positions we thought would be vacant and for how long, to be able to fully fund our comp and class study and make that work within the revenue structure that we provided to you a few weeks back at our budget workshop meeting. So if you have a chance to look at that, or even now, I can walk you through it, which is probably the more preferred thing to do. Our revenue projections for the year in total were $141,208,365. That is actually an increase over the fiscal 21 budget, which was $130,300,431. And you'll probably recall at the time that the budget was prepared last year that due to the uncertainty of COVID, the budget was trimmed down pretty well. So what you will see if you look at prior year budgets and actuals expended, all right, what you will see on that revenues tab is we are pretty close to what would have been normal for a pre-COVID year. So we were at close to 137 million for actuals in fiscal 19, a little more than 138 million in fiscal 20, and our recommended budget is 141 million for fiscal 22. I have a lovely red note here at the top that says some of this revenue projection may change depending upon the amount that we come to realize for the assessed values in determining our value of the mill. So just keep in mind between now and the final reading, we may have to tweak this. I hope it's ever so slightly and nothing material, but that's where we are with our revenues. Does anyone have any questions about those before I move on to the expenditure piece? I can't see anyone's hand, so please speak up if you do.
I have a quick one if I might.
Okay, sure.
Revenue from property taxes, is that based on an increased millage, or is that just based on increased value of the mill?
Those are our projections based upon collections for the last 3 fiscal years with about a let me see what it is. It's a less than 2% increase in what we think the value of the mill will be. It is right now, since we don't have the value of the mill, we don't exactly know what that's going to be. We think it's going to be somewhere around 2.1 or so million. But until we have that for sure, we won't know. But the goal for us, albeit a tall order, was to fully fund comp and class with no mill rate increase. So unless you perhaps sold or purchased a home or did any major improvements, I wouldn't expect that an individual taxpayer would see an increase in their tax liability for this current year, as we are not recommending a millage rate increase.
Thank you, Chris. Anybody else the question? I can't see any hands, so speak up if you do. All right, Ms. Richling, I think you can move forward.
Okay. All right, so for the expenditure piece, you will have several line items there. Sarah, if you don't mind, or Bruna, whoever's controlling the screen. Thank you. Is that the department one? let's see there. I need to make my own screen bigger. Can you go to a tab that might say 2019-2021? Oh, yes, the second tab.
Got it.
There it is. Yes, thank you so much. All right, if you will scroll to the top for me. Okay, before I dive into this, I want to give you an overview. We have highlighted for you in blue at the top all of the elected officials' offices. So you'll start there, and they go in order, not by alphabetical order as far as the department name, but by our particular account coding order in column A. They're no reflection of our recommendation on importance. Just wanted to throw that out there. It's just strictly an accounting thing. So all of those are highlighted at the top for you in blue. And you'll notice any additional amounts that were in our proposed budget that's above and beyond column E, which was the elected officials 22 requested budget, is due to the compensation and classification study. They would not have had that information at the time that they made their budget requests to you guys. So I just wanted to let you know that column G that says FY21 to FY22 proposed difference, where all of those are increases, is due to the compensation and classification study. Below that, you'll have all of the departments just in white that are with county administration. Again, going in order by our chart of accounts with the county administrator first, and following all the way down to the very bottom, which you will see all of the departments that we consolidated. You might recall that we mentioned to you some of our budget workshops that we were really doing a massive undertaking this year with consolidating many of our departments and even many of our line items within those departments for greater transparency and ease of operations and greater accountability. It's much easier to monitor budgets this way. So you'll see those. So if you'll scroll just a little bit further to the bottom. There we go. All of those are sort of in a light gray color. And all of these departments, their budgets didn't go away. They were simply consolidated with what I would call a parent department above. So, for example, the ones at the bottom that say, you know, Library, Beaufort, Bluffton, Hilton Head, Labico, et cetera, are now just in one generic department called Library. Much of Public Works was consolidated. The same is true for much of Parks and Rec. So I just wanted to reiterate that so that you remember what you're looking at before I do any other deeper dives. Does anyone have any questions yet about that, or are you happy for me to proceed?
Yeah, I have a question. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes.
And looking at the items that you have in parentheses, does that signify a decrease or an increase?
That will be an increase. So what I did was I took...
Parentheses are an increase.
Yes, sir. That should be correct.
Okay.
So that should be column C's budget, which just, for example, if it were at the very top, county council in fiscal 21 was budgeted $868,859. If you compare that to the proposed budget in column F for fiscal 22 of $977,000, that difference there is, I can see how that would be confusing for you. I can change that before this.
No, I'm used to seeing parentheses meaning a loss or a decrease. That's all. So if, in this case, it's an increase. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Well, now that I know that, it's very clear. That's good.
Okay. I just want to... Yes.
No, go ahead. You speak. I'll speak after you.
Okay. All right. I was just going to walk you through sort of what you're seeing here. So again, the only changes that were made to any of the electeds' budget requests would have been an increase for the personnel piece only. We didn't, we didn't modify their requests for supplies and materials or uniforms or professional services or any of that type of stuff. So I just wanted to be clear about that. However, if you're a county administration's department, we did cut a little bit here and there to be able to fund comp and class. So if you guys are agreeable to the bottom lines that you're seeing here today, what we will do after today's meeting is slowly begin disseminating that information out so that our department heads now have all of the detail that you guys have here as well. So let's go through this column G, if you would like for me to do that, or we can. Yes, sir.
Yeah, before you go, I think it's column F, and I don't have that in the, unless I print this off yesterday, unless you send something updated since that. But in your looking at the treasurer's budget, are you saying to me or saying to us that because the amount is almost 400,000 or 200,000, I can't see it, that the treasurer is having a staff reduction?
No,
for next
sir.
year?
Actually, she is not. She's online today too, I believe. If you would like to answer her any other questions.
No,
But
no.
for this
I'm
particular-
just looking at. She requested 26 and proposed 22, so that's about $400,000 difference there.
Yes, sir. So in her request, she asked to keep all of her vacancies, which we did do that, but she also made a request for 3 additional staff members. And administration's recommendation this year is that we not hire new staff, that we continue with our existing staff, and in Councilman Rodman's words, operate a little more lean and take care of the staff that we have. So that was a recommendation by administration. However, she is online today, and Treasurer Walls, if you would like to advocate once again on behalf of your request for those 3 additional staff, I will happily lend the floor to you.
Thank you. I truly appreciate that, Whitney. Councilman Glover, you are correct that our original requested budget was significantly higher. As Ms. Richland stated, we did not have final compensation numbers from the comp study when we submitted our budget, and they continued to be adjusted after that. Additionally, our salaries are allocated between the general fund and the execution fund. There are 2 funds. And in the previous budget numbers you all have seen, it was allocating 100% of our personnel expenditures to the general fund, which is not correct and gave it the appearance of an inflated number. So there are changes that have been made to that salaries line item. In reference to our 3 personnel requests, I'm on the front lines, my team and I, dealing with our customers who are having to pay the taxes that are created and determined by bodies such as yourselves. So I am very acutely sensitive to our customers and the need to keep taxes as low as possible, certainly. But what I have asked for is exactly what we need in order to continue serving Beaufort County in the manner and the same level of quality and timeliness that we have during my tenure at the Treasurer's Office. And here is how I know exactly why that is. While the delay of the tax bills was not planned and was not something I think any of us would have chosen, I viewed it as a learning opportunity for our team. And that was our approach. We think that we are a great team serving Beaufort County, but now we really get to test the stretch and test the limits of those boundaries. And what we learned almost immediately was that the staff currently occupying the roles I'm asking to add to, they were already at capacity before that. So when this influx of work happened and we see the growth all around us, everyone watching is seeing new homes, new cars, new license plates, new, and new means a new bill, a new payment, a new transaction that's going to need to be handled by our office. Those roles were at capacity and essentially created a bottleneck through our process that required everyone to work. I'm not talking a little overtime. I'm talking 60 to 70 hours a week. We had employees working in shifts that comprised 20 hours of a 24-hour day. I'm not telling you this to feel sorry for them. We are all proud of what we did. I'm telling you this because it gave us the opportunity to see that the roles we have cannot handle any more than they already are without an extreme expectation of becoming overworked. which creates overtime and a bunch of other performance issues. We know there's growth that is going to happen. I hold my team and I to a very high standard, probably higher than some of you do. And I don't ever want to compromise that for the people of this county. When we say you're paying online, it's faster, it needs to be faster. These roles, if you want to think of them as a screen, they are a filter for up to 83 files per week, and each of those files have thousands of payments on them. They need to balance with what is due, they need to be accurate, and they need to be imported correctly. That takes time. And when there is an issue that requires research, it holds up that whole file, again, creating a bottleneck. I cannot, and I made that request, again, because that's what we believe is necessary to handle this next tax year, based on our observations of what has worked and not worked the past 12 months. And there was nothing in the situation that was going to go perfectly. There's something's always going to go wrong. But I would like all of you to recall the outstanding work my team did in order to make that happen. And what I am asking for is that that not be part of their normal business practice, because we can't receive additional funding to add to their numbers. Our request with the volume of work we have is not outrageous. Now, if the measurement is simply, it doesn't matter what the workload is, it's not an emergency personnel, it's not approved, I can understand that. But I think that is a very black and white view of a world that has gray in it. I appreciate, Ms. Richland, the opportunity to take some of your time and to advocate for my team, because that's who's going to bear the brunt of this work. And my commitment to our taxpayers is that we're going to do a great job for you no matter what. I'm asking to be allowed to equip my team so that we can do that in the same manner we always have. Thank you.
I didn't know that was a loaded question, but thank you. I appreciate it.
Chairman Passman, I think you had your hand up. You have a question? York,
Yes.
are you done with your questions? York, you were done? Okay. Joe, go ahead then.
Okay, Maria, I understand exactly where you're coming from, and I'm going to play devil's advocate for a moment, just so I understand.
Mm-hmm.
When you created your budget last year, you had absolutely no idea that the pandemic was in fact going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
When it did, you had to make changes in the way you did business, and you furloughed a number of people.
Correct.
That equated to savings, did it not?
Absolutely, it did. Yeah.
Okay, so in your salary line, at the end of the year, you may have money left over, correct?
Correct, we may. The intention was that we repurpose those salary line items, that excess that we weren't spending, and we invested in technology that served our customers, such as the kiosks that you see at our buildings.
Okay. Will you still have money left over that could go towards these positions?
I mean, certainly, if we had extra money, we're going to use that first, but that's not an ongoing funding of that role.
I understand that.
Yeah, and those vacancies do need to be filled, because those are frontline. Those are frontline roles that are going to answer our phones, and they're going to serve our customers coming in. The roles I'm requesting are technical roles. They are less customer intensive as a face-to-face, and are managing the flow of payment data and verifying its accuracy and its appropriateness.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I absolutely understand where you're coming from. I'm just trying to find if there are additional dollars that could be used towards this.
Currently, on an ongoing basis, no, there are not. And I do not want to pretend or expect that the unusualness of this past fiscal year would be a certainty in every fiscal year going forward. And I certainly couldn't hire someone without being certain that I had enough funding for personnel to keep them you know,
Oh,
to
no,
keep them paid and employed.
I absolutely understand that portion of it. Okay, thanks.
Of course.
All right, if I could jump in right now, and I was going to do this at the end, but let me just jump in right now as we're discussing. You know, I've watched the finance staff do an incredible job of where we are right now with our budget for the 2022 year. I know we just sent out today that everyone should have. If you don't, we'll send it again. Sarah did send it out to everybody. It is the elected officials budget, and that came through SharePoint. And some of that was my fault because I didn't realize that we needed to have that information. As the first time I've seen it. And SharePoint is actually what every elected official has put in and presented and given to our finance department. And it's information that I had never seen before, but it does give a line item budget for every elected official's office. So if you get that and you go through on the bottom and you scroll across and see, I think everyone's there except for the public defender's office, which Mr. Passman had pointed that out to me. So instead of putting our elected officials through the ringer and having them feel like we're going after them or we're criticizing their budgets, what I like to do is have everyone go through that and look at it and write up any questions they have for elected officials. Send that to Sarah. Sarah then is going to take and compile those questions for each office. We will get it to them by this Friday. So again, if you can look at today's Tuesday, because again, we're under a 6-week time frame here to get this completed. And that way we can get back to each elected official any questions we have regarding their budget. They'll have a chance to put it in writing. They don't have to respond. They can only respond if they want to. We can then look at that, because what I've seen happen with our finance department, they have bent over backwards and worked very hard, and they've been cutting things different places and moving things around and reclassifying things. And so again, the county finance staff has had an incredible job. And then we have elected officials. Even with us, you see the elected officials, the county council's budget, where we seem to keep increasing. Again, nothing wrong with that. We want to supply anything and everything that's needed for the treasurer's office, the sheriff's department, clerk of court, whatever that is, that we need to have that information. So if everyone could go through that, any questions on any elected officials' budgets, put together those questions, get it to Sarah. We'll then get it to those elected officials, and that way we can get responses that are in writing and something that will then give the elected officials a fair chance at responding to without having to think on their feet. Like Maria done a great job today, so we appreciate that of taking questions like that. So again, just wanted to put that in there, because today what we're doing here today is we want to move forward with moving the budget ordinance out of finance so we can get our 3 readings in by the end of June. So,
Chairman Lawson, if I may request, just in the quick view that I just had, that is not the requested amount for our office. And so if we as elected officials could get an opportunity, there were some SharePoint issues, an opportunity to confirm that it is actually what we have asked for, so that way you all are not basing your questions on unupdated numbers.
Absolutely, and we'll make sure that all the elected officials have what we're giving out, because again, we just got that today. And again, I apologize, that's my fault for not us having all this before, but technology with SharePoint and everything else is something that we're learning as we go, and trying to make this more efficient and mostly more transparent, something that we can then see. I had talked to some county elected officials and hadn't even seen the SharePoint, which didn't even realize that there's more information than we have as county or what's available. So
and now,
thank you, Maria, and I think going back to Whitney, Joe, did you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, now before we move on, the document you just saw on the screen is what I did as a result of what Pinky sent out. I took her document and manipulated things that were in the document. So if you wanted to print it out, it prints landscape on one single page so that you can easily take a look at it, because sometimes reading it on the screen is somewhat difficult. So I'm going to suggest that after this meeting is over, that we collect all of the documents we talked about today that were shown on screen so that anybody who has been looking in on this meeting can have them all in one single group of files, know what we talked about revenues, what we talked about expenditures, the individual budgets of all of the various elected officials and county officials and departments. And if in fact we could get the budget from the public defender's office, because that is not part of this, that is not part of this, that is going to be helpful so that we can in fact do the timeline we want, is do our due diligence, take a look at the documents, have whatever questions we may have for any of the officials, whether they're elected or not, be able to funnel them through and get them answered so that we, in fact, do what we have to do by the end of June.
Thank you, Chairman Passman. So we will compile that. And where was that going to go? Is that going to go, we're going to send them to the county council people, and then we'll make them available. Obviously, I think how we can do that. How would we make that available, Joe?
I'm going to suggest that the finance department, we'll set it up in some way, shape, or form as a result of this meeting. Here are the documents that were discussed today, so that anyone from the public has access to these, because there are individuals that are chiming in right now, looking at us and trying to figure out what we're doing. And as we said, we want to be as transparent as we possibly can. We want to educate the public of exactly, these are your tax dollars. These are why we're collecting the money we're collecting and what it's going to be used for. So I think, our finance department has done a yeoman's job of doing this. We just now want to collect everything in one particular area so that we all have access to it. So I know we'll find a way to do that.
All right, good. Ms. Whitney Richland, you were still on the floor. I think that you had brought Ms. Walls in just to give her a chance to answer a question. I'm going to give the floor back to you if you want to go ahead and continue with your presentation.
Okay, thank you. All right, so Sarah, if you don't mind sharing that general fund document once more, the spreadsheet with the colors.
Sorry, hang on. I have like 7 documents open. Trying to find. Got it.
All right, thank you. Okay, I will defer to you guys in the moment. Do you want me to go sort of department by department, or do you want me to hit the high points that experience the most change? Basically, what you will see here, the increases in column G above and beyond what Ms. Harriet provided for you guys previously is a direct result of the compensation and classification study. So I'm at this point, I don't know that you necessarily will want me to go through and read out to you every single line item that you're seeing, but if there are some that really jump out to you, I am really happy to talk about those. One other change, actually.
Let's go ahead and have you do your highlights, and then if anyone has a question on a particular line item, we can come back and ask that afterwards.
Okay. All right. So the overall increase that you're going to notice is that 3.8 million in your bottom line. The other difference that you will see here as a change from the prior year budget to the current year that we talked about in some of our budget workshops was that we are consolidating certain line items to certain departments. You might remember I mentioned utilities now being housed in our facilities department as opposed to being spread out and allocated year-round over all of the various departments countywide. Another item would be things like telephone or IT-related equipment. Risk management is now housing all of our property and liability insurance, things like that. So those are most of the big changes that you're going to see, but I'm going to start with the county administrator, because that's one of the next departments that you'll see that's quite a big change. The reason for that is in line with the new proposed organizational chart for fiscal 22, Mr. Greenway preferred to house all of the assistant county administrators under the county administration's department code. So what you'll see there is the increase is the result of each ACA, their admin assistants, in addition to the remaining 4 months of Ms. Jacobs' payout that's comprising that $1.4 million difference. And we were careful to make sure that we then subtracted those ACA and admin assistants amounts from each of the respective departments that they originally came from. So I wanted to point that out to you because I felt it was important that you would know that. The next kind of really big change that you will notice is risk management, as we talked about earlier. Whereas before they used to only have things like personnel costs and supplies and operating type expenditures there, they now house all of our property and liability insurance and, workers' comp and things like that in this line item. So rather than, again, being spread out in incremental amounts across all of the departments, they're just there under one place. Trekking on down, the next big one that you will notice is in the IT world with the management information systems. Again, if there are communications type expenditures with the telephone or even IT related outlay, rather than having that spread out, those are now also housed under the management. I know Patrick doesn't like being called IT, but the management information systems department code. Further down, the next big change that you'll see is related to the employer provided benefits for group health and all of those line items there. That's actually about a $2 million decrease over, or under rather, the prior year. And that's based upon some of the renewal information that we received from HR. So we feel that they are providing us with a reliable number there. And so we have not, we did not leave that as it was, since they provided us with an updated number. Below that, you'll notice that the EMS department is seeing a pretty substantial increase. That is the direct result of the comp and classification study. And again, below that, I want to just mention these two together. The detention center is about 4 lines down. It's on row 45. That one is $578,000 difference. Those are results of the compensation and classification study. I'd like to point that out simply because those two departments in particular have had a really difficult time filling vacant positions. We are hoping that with the increased rates from the compensation study, that it will be much easier for us to attract and retain our very qualified and performing employees in those areas. I will say that the detention center's amount did factor in a pretty big vacancy savings, just because we know that come July 1st, we won't automatically have his 22 vacant positions filled. So we did a gradual and an incremental increase over the year for the comp and class piece, but just we're aware that we can trim it down a little bit because of the vacancies that would still exist. So I did want to point that out. And also at this time cheerlead for the comp and class study, because you'll notice that their annual budget as compared with their year to date for each of those departments is more than the variance there for this time of year is greater than what you would normally want to see. So I'm cheerleading this comp and class study there because he really needs it for his departments. And it's not just him, but that's a primary example that I can point to where you can really see the impact. All right, we'll move on down to Public Works. This was one of those areas that Jared Fralix was very cooperative in allowing us to consolidate. They had numerous departments all over the Public Works function, and we were able to consolidate those mostly into this main Public Works admin, if you will, department. So that is why you'll see that in fiscal 21, they had $502,000 budget, whereas in fiscal 22, the proposed budget is $4.8 million, and that is A, comp and class, but B, the consolidated effort there. And the same thing with facilities management below. Again, things like electricity and water and sewer were consolidated into facilities management's line item and taking out of all the other respective budgets. All right, Sarah, if you will scroll up for me just a pinch. Okay. Next one is the solid waste recycling and admin. So fiscal 21's budget was $8,780,000. The proposed, based upon requests that were input into SharePoint, and again, this was not fully capital. This was based upon operations, and the comp and classification study was at $10,158,500. So the increase there is $1,378,000. I want you to note, Sarah, if you'll scroll all the way down to the bottom. I want you to see that there's a little note down there that says the general fund's preliminary total is that $141 million. We are reducing it for the solid waste piece that will come out of the general fund and go to an enterprise fund. So overall, the recommended total will change today. It will be reduced down to $131,049,803. And likewise, once we have the value of the mill determined, the revenues that I shared with you at the very beginning will be reduced accordingly and moved over as well. I just wanted to point that out. All right, Sarah, if you'll humor me and go back up one more time. Okay, perfect. Thank you. All right, so we are now on, if you'll follow me down through to, that is line 57. Their Parks and Rec admin, same thing as Public Works. They have numerous departments all over the county that Mr. Atkinson and Ms. Loper were cooperative enough to consolidate. The one that we kept different was, at their request, was Bluffton's Parks and Rec activities. So you'll see just 2 departments now for all of Park and Recreation countywide. So their 21 budget was $786,329. Their proposed for fiscal 22 is $449,610, which is an increase of 3.6, almost 3.7 million. And again, that's the consolidation effort along with comp and class. And the same holds true of Parks and Rec Bluffton, except that rather than theirs increasing, theirs decreased by $50,000, $50,818. And that is because of things that were removed overall from their budget that we've discussed, things like the IT piece, the telephones, the electricity and utilities that went to other departments. So none of their other line items were reduced. They were just simply reallocated to another area. And then finally,
question.
Yes. Sure.
I got this question earlier, but did we remove all of the funding for Island Rec, or was that simply just moved geographically as well?
It's geographically, it's actually below in some of the subsidies piece. So we did not take that out. It is still there and very much a part of our budget.
Cool. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Library admin is our next big change there. You'll see the difference there is $3.7 million. And same type of thing. We had numerous categories for libraries based upon whether or not they were in Beaufort, Bluffton, Dale, all over. And we've now housed them in one category here in one department. So that is the increase there along with the compensation and classification study. And Sarah, if you'll scroll up for me just a pinch more. You're doing a great job. Thank you. All right. Below this, you will see the capital outlay that is normally spent in the general fund. That's why you see a lot of blanks in fiscal 21. Many of them were taken away in fiscal 22. We requested that if a department had another funding source or could squeeze them in with existing savings in 21, that we remove those requests from 22 so that we can take the majority of our resources for fiscal 22 and allocate them towards comp and class. So you'll see here, there's not a huge amount overall. It's a little less than $2 million for capital outlay in fiscal 22's budget. And then below that, you'll have some of our subsidies to other people. So the indigent care, Beaufort, that's $978,000, was left the same as it was last year. And that is where you'll see a lot of the Together for Beaufort things and the Island Rec and all of that stuff. And then below that you'll also have the same payments for higher ed and the hospitals and all that stuff. So we did not alter those at all. Those are exactly the same as they were in the previous year.
Whitney, you've referred twice now to the Island Rec. Where is that, the line item?
I believe it's the one that's housed in that, oh, hold on a minute. I'm sorry. That says Indigent Care Beaufort. Just a moment. Let me go back and pull that out.
I believe it's in the Parks and Rec, Whitney.
Is it? Is it housing park? I was thinking that we had separated that out.
Where is it, Sarah?
It's in Org Code 1,1600 in Parks and Rec as a direct subsidy to the Hilton Head Rec Center.
Where is that?
Up here at the top. Whitney, could you highlight, or somebody, I'm sorry.
So it's in there somewhere, but we don't know how much?
It's 135,000, sir.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, Pinky. I think because we had labeled it as a direct subsidy line item, I was thinking it was one of the direct subsidy object codes, org codes below. Thank you for keeping me straight on that. That is your general fund budget in a nutshell. I'm happy to answer any more questions you have or even go into further detail if you like. Big shout out here to Pinky. She has worked tirelessly around the clock helping to put this together, along with many staff from HR who have lent their expertise in working with the Common Class Plan. We could not have done this without them, so really big thank you there. Okay, I see Councilman Robbins' hands. Yes, sir.
Yes, question. The fund that we've used to fund the impact fees, when we waive an impact fee, do we have that in and at what dollar amount?
Pinky, is that in the special revenue fund, the impact fee special revenue fund?
Yes, both library and parks impact fees are in the special revenue fund. So those budgets are in.
No, the one I'm speaking of is we cannot waive impact fees without reimbursing the impact funds. So I think we did one at 50 or 100,000 a year 2 years ago, and I think that's being depleted. So we need to go back and add money so that we can waive impact fees.
It was for affordable housing.
Yes, affordable housing. You're absolutely right.
We will discuss that at the staff level and making sure that gets replenished at the $100,000.
Yeah, I think 100,000 is good, and I think that is the best way. I think Alice might concur that we can contribute to the affordable housing issue. The second one I have, and I can't do it today, but I think it would be useful to have a reconciliation looking back 2 or 3 years at what's happening with the Hilton Head parks, because it got all tied up in the whole uniform fee piece. And my sense is that we have unilaterally cut the fees to the Hilton Head parks. It'd be helpful to have a reconciliation of that at some point.
Okay.
I agree, Stu.
We'll be happy to do that.
Mr. Glover, I see your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Richland, you keep referring to the increase in the compensation for employees. How are you folding that into the budget at this time? Is that something that will take effect July 1, or is that going to be folded in later on in the year?
Our recommendation, just for the payroll burden of not trying to split payroll certain days at a certain pay rate and certain days at another pay rate, is that become effective the first full pay period in July. So it doesn't necessarily start on July 1st. I would have to check our payroll calendar, but there's a few days after that when the next payroll cycle begins, and that's our recommendation for implementation.
Mr. Glover, you're correct. Yeah. I was going to say, you're correct. They had made the recommendation that we start January 1st. That was whenever we thought the comp and class study was going to be a lot more than what it is. And Ms. Richland, if you can just add to that and explain that real quick of where we ended up, and again, how that's working out. Because again, What's our total now? It's $3.5 million for a whole year of the Kaufman class.
That's the total variance between fiscal 21's budget and what we are proposing for fiscal 22. If you'll actually take a look at, Sarah, there's one more tab in that spreadsheet that you were just sharing a moment ago. It's the third tab. It says expense by character code. There we go. Perfect. Thank you. This one actually breaks down for you each of our expenditure line items in terms of how they are classified on our financials. So you'll notice that even though the total general fund increased by $3.8 million, if you look at the top there, the personnel services line item is where all the compensation and classification adjustments are housed. So fiscal 21's budget was $84,774,970. Fiscal 22's proposed budget is $88,119,028. So the variance there is, $4 or so million overall. I should have given you another column for the difference there. I apologize. I can do that and send it back to you. Does that make sense? Or do you need me to elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah, I said 3 point something. You said so. It's over $4 million. Then. So,
right at 4, I think. Hold on, let me do some quick math over here.
Mr. Glover, do you have anything else you wanted to ask or add?
No. I appreciate knowing that we are folding this in July 1, so I'm glad to hear that. Yeah.
Any other questions? Hands, if you can just speak up if you have a question. Chris, I see your hand.
Thank you. I've got 2. Relative to the administrator budget, how much of that is discretionary funds and how does that compare to last year? That's the first one. And the second one is, can you remind me how much revenue we're budgeting for sheriff services on Hilton Head?
I can. With the discretionary funds piece, are you specifically referring to the contingency line item?
Yep.
Okay. You'll probably appreciate this. So traditionally, I believe that the contingency has been right at $1 million, or excuse me, not $1 million, that would be quite a contingency, has been right around $100,000 this year. In order to completely balance the revenue exactly to the expenditure balance, I took this very small difference and added it to his contingency line item. So this year it's right at 100,000. Let me pull that up and tell you exactly, actually, if you'll give me just a second. It's right around 101,000. So it's not a huge jump. 101,346 precisely.
Okay, thank you.
All right, you're welcome. And then your next question, remind me of that.
Sheriff services on Hilton Head. How much is budgeted for revenue?
Okay, that's actually in the special revenue fund. So if you don't mind, when we're done discussing general fund, I'll pass it over to Pinky, who will go through all of the special revenue funds, the enterprise and all that. We have a whole other section, but we're cutting it short on time. But that is actually also where the public defender's request is. I know that it was stated earlier that it's not in the general fund. That's because it's actually paid for from the special revenue fund. So we didn't omit it or forget it. It's just in a different location.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Does anybody have any final questions on the general fund I might be able to answer before passing off the baton?
Yeah, could I just ask one more question?
Yes, sir.
The county the county attorney line item is here, and then we have a tendency of somehow in the over expenditure that you showed earlier, that is almost the same amount additional funding and stuff. Is that an area that we really need to start looking at? County attorneys and legal fees and et cetera, et cetera. Are we being sued a whole lot? I mean, I don't know. So I'm asking the question. It seems like the overage is almost double what we have budgeted.
Yes, sir. In the fiscal 21 budget, and Mr. Taylor can back this up, they drastically reduced the amount of the professional services as it relates to legal fees for fiscal 21, which is why I'm coming to you with such a big amount for the budget reallocation. In order to hedge ourselves against that from happening in fiscal 22, we have $300,000 in that line item for legal services. And that's just for the county attorney's office. Administration also has a professional services line item for legal, and I will tell you what that amount is as well. It was in 21, let's see, 80,000, and I believe that the request that came through was also at 80,000. So that one was not bumped up, but we can do so if you would like us to. All right, any other questions? All right, I'm not hearing anyone. I'm gonna, at this time, unless you guys need to take a quick breather, I'd love to pass the ball off to Pinky and let her walk you through all the special revenue funds. And she's worked, again, tirelessly on this. So I want to commend her publicly for the job well done that she has done here with our budget today. Pinky, up to you.
Thank you, Whitney. I appreciate that. Good afternoon, Council. Sarah, do you want me to share or do you want to share?
Do you want the ordinance or the number document?
The spreadsheets, and there'll be one at the top that says fiscal year 22 SRF.
Got it.
Because I originally submitted the general fund without the comp and class, and Whitney has submitted one with comp and class, so.
Hey, Gerald.
Okay, if you could go down to page 3.
Okay.
Hey, Joe, can you mute, please?
I'm trying to mute people and then hear where in the document I'm supposed to go.
Page 3, sorry. Okay, so this is our special revenue fund expenditures proposed for fiscal year 21-22. These are all restricted funding sources. So as Ms. Cook mentioned earlier, most of these have a restriction either by either a grant or some legal obligation that these funds are recorded. That's the reason that these funds are revenue funds. My notes to this side honestly just reflect where I needed to go do some more digging to figure out exactly where we were going with some of those, so they weren't an indicator of anyone's entries in SharePoint. So I just wanted to clarify that a little bit. In fiscal year, you can see the same column format for the general fund that I have previously submitted for fiscal year 19 and fiscal year 20 actuals. This was approved in fiscal year 21, and then what has been requested in fiscal year 22. And some of these, we are still trying to determine if these funds are even, the actual fund itself is even being utilized. And so if it is not, we are likely going to inactivate this fund to clean up some of the special revenue funds. And I've got some that I'm still waiting on, a couple of figures, but I wanted to make sure we got this to you. But most of the time, these funds are already restricted for the purpose that they are being, that is recorded in the fund. Councilman Hervershawn, the question that you asked Whitney just a few minutes ago, you can see down there in the yellow is the Fund 2280. That would be the new sheriff's town of Hilton Head service fees. And the number and the budget entered there totaled 3.891 million. So that would answer your question. Sir, could you scroll down just a little bit, please?
Yeah, and that does not include benefits. Benefits would be added to that, which brings us another $500,000.
Okay. Some of these other funds are some of the ones that the Public Safety Special Revenue Fund are some of the ones that Ms. Cook addressed a little while ago. And so I'm just going to kind of scroll past that because as she mentioned, those are funds that are already restricted to, same going forward. Alcohol and drug and disabilities and special needs are not reported in the general fund since they receive various types of funding from the state. So they are all recorded here in our special revenue funds. And if we continue down, Sarah, please, sorry. I'm sorry, could you go up just a little bit more? A little bit more? Okay, right there. So if we keep scrolling down, we'll see public welfare special revenue funds. This is where COSI, our organization that Mr. Leiter runs, that's where their revenues and expenditures are recorded in that fund. And then also we have some other subsidies that we are a part of, the CDBG, the LCOG, which I believe will be presenting in a little while, and the HUD Home Consortium. Those will be listed in these funds. A little bit further down, Sarah. I think that'll be the last page of the, yep. So we also have some of our other things. We have our Defense Key Transportation DOT grant, and then the rest of these are impact fees where they are accounted for in these special revenue funds as all those are restricted to capital improvements. So those are our cultural and recreational special revenue funds. We have various funds that we only utilize when we receive funding. That would be some of these library trust funds and some of the Hilton Head Friends of the Library and other library grants and state aid. And then the very last few are the parks impact fees fund, special revenue funds. Any question on special revenue funds before we move on? I'm sorry, I can't see anyone, so.
Yeah, quickly, impact fees, that's, I'm looking at two. Ladies Island, St. Helena Library, I guess we don't do enough development on those areas to get the kind of revenue we need in those areas, huh? In those line items.
Are you referring to Ladies Island, St. Helena?
Yeah, compared to a Bluffton. Just looking very envious, jealous of what's in there. That's all.
I can understand.
Don't want the development, but sure would love to have the money.
I'm sure you would.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? All right, Sarah, do you want to keep scrolling down to move on to the rest? We are now going to move into our debt service funds. This is where all of our debt service is recorded, and we have three different funds right now, which is the rural and critical debt service and the countywide debt service, as well as the 3100, which is the Bluffton Parkway debt service. This is where all of our bond interest and payments are paid out of. So GASB requires us to, GASB is a governmental accounting standards board, so they require us to make sure that our debt service is recorded in all of our bonds and interest payments are recorded in a debt service fund. There's not a whole lot to it, but this is the amount of interest and principal payments we pay annually. Right, Sarah, do you want to go to the next? Any questions about debt service funds? I'm sorry. All right. All right, these are our capital project funds. In working very extensively with Ms. Brittany Fields, we were able to put together a lot of line item budgets or total budgets so that we could utilize these funds without having to repeatedly come to council to utilize the fund balance. So these are a lot of our bonds that were issued. The 2009 GO bonds, as you can see, are at a zero balance for fiscal year 22. So we are going to be inactivating that CPF, Capital Projects Fund. Moving forward, we have some remaining balances in some of our older bonds that we are planning to hopefully continue with some of the projects that are over in the Capital Projects Department that we're going to try to continue next fiscal year. And as you can see over here to the very left is the fund number, and then the Capital Projects Fund's name is associated with the appropriate fund number. And these are the balances that are left in those funds. These are the numbers that our capital projects team will utilize moving into the next fiscal year. Any questions on the capital project funds? Most of these have some form of a referendum or ordinance tied to them. Any questions? All right. Jared, thank you. And these are our enterprise funds. We mainly have 4 major enterprise funds, and that would be our Garage Internal Service Fund. This is where we are going to house all of our revenues and expenditures for maintaining our fleet. And we have our Stormwater Utility Enterprise Funds. The operational expenditures are out of this 50250011. The others are various grants and other expenditures of the enterprise funds related to stormwater utility. And then below that, we have 51000011, which is the Beaufort, newly named Beaufort Executive Airport Enterprise Fund. And then the 540011 is the Hilton Head Island Operations Enterprise Fund. The 5402 is where their grants are housed, as the 5102 is where the Beaufort Executive Airport's grants are housed. This enterprise funds are normally record business type activities, so that's why they have to be housed separately, as their revenues have to be offset by their expenditures. And these are the totals that were submitted for fiscal year 22 by the respective department heads.
Why is on the Garage Internal Service Fund, why is the requested so much higher than approved, you know?
Yes, sir. Previously, we were not utilizing our internal service fund as it should be. So this year, for example, our salaries and some of the expenses that we bill out to other outside agencies that are garage services were not being recorded in that fund as they should be. They were being recorded in the general fund, and as a part of some of the fund structure cleanup that we are trying to do going into fiscal year 22, we are appropriately recording the transactions in the Garage Internal Service Fund. And the bulk of that 3.4 is our fleet services, first vehicle services contract, which was also previously being farmed out to each individual department. Also with other garage repairs and maintenances were being farmed out to individual departments, but we're housing everything in the Garage Internal Service Fund. Does that help answer your question, sir?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions about the enterprise funds? Sarah, can you see any hands up? Because I don't see any, so I just want to make sure I didn't miss anybody.
No, you're good. Go ahead, Pinky.
Everybody's asked any questions.
All right, well, you guys were really easy on me today. Thank you, Sarah, for helping facilitate that.
Nikki, can you do me a favor? Can you
Yes.
highlight the public defender's budget just so
Yes,
they know what that is and so they'll know the requested amount?
Absolutely. Sarah, would you mind pulling that back up? And then if you don't mind going to page 3 again, which is special revenue funds, please, ma'am. There we go. All right, right there. Perfect place to stop, Sarah. Thank you. Fund 2110. Sarah's highlighting it for us right there. That would be the 14th Circuit Public Defender. This was their request prior to Ms. Smith's presentation at the last budget workshop. So they are currently fiscal year 21 approved was 3.53 million, and prior to the special revenue funds being included in here, that was the same request we had received from the Public Defender's Office, and then she had later submitted an additional request for funding. So these figures are prior to her presentation at the very last budget workshop, and I believe this is also what is proposed by the county administrator. So this is where our public defenders' revenue or expenditures are recorded.
Is
that good? I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Councilmember Glover.
No, I thought somebody had something to ask about the public defender. I wanted to go back to stormwater real quick to get a clear understanding on stormwater, if that's okay, which is the next page.
Well, before we get off the public defender, since it is a position like the elected officials, should we not have a line item budget what constitutes that $3.5 million?
Yes, sir. Currently they do have a excuse me. They do submit a line item budget for. They receive additional funding from the state, so I'm assuming that is why previously it was recorded in a special revenue fund. But yes, they have submitted a line item budget.
Okay.
Is this amount, Joe, include that state grant?
That I don't know. Since we don't have a line item budget, I don't know. I would think the grant is separate and apart. As a special revenue fund, I think this is the
expenditure
money,
piece only.
Yeah, right.
So this is our funding only for the 14th Circuit Public Defender. Does the submission from that office indicate, since there are 4 other counties in that 14th Circuit, the contributions of the other counties? Pinky, do you know that?
That would be the additional special revenues that come in from other counties, the amounts that Ms. Smith indicated at her budget presentation, or request, excuse me.
So that's available for viewing somewhere?
Does she put that in through SharePoint, Pinky? Do you have a SharePoint budget from her?
I do have a SharePoint budget, but it does not include her other counties. I can definitely add a tab into that spreadsheet and send that back out with the public defender's information on it for what was submitted. Would that be helpful?
Yes, if you could get us the SharePoint budget line item that she submitted, then we can compare that with, just like we're doing with everybody else, we can use that same information.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, could I go back to stormwater real quick?
Yes. Are we done with the public defender's office? If we are, we're good to go. Yes, Mr. Glover. Mr. If you could help Mr. Glover and go back to the stormwater, please.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I saw $9 million and a 4.5 million, and I'm just sort of confused with that. That's all. If you could explain that.
Sure. Sarah, do you want to share or do you want me to share? It would be the very last page, Sarah. Thank you.
Last page, right. The actual for was 4.8, and then approved for 21 is 9.2. 9.9, almost 10 million. And then on that same line, for the requested is 4.5. Kind of, is that a lot of capital projects in that 9.9? 9.9 million that was approved in 21.
I will actually, yes, sir.
Yeah.
This was submitted by the Stormwater Department. I'm going to reach out to either Jared or Neil if they're on the line. I utilize their submissions.
Or is that money being spread elsewhere? No, it wouldn't be. Stormwater. Anyway, I was just curious.
I think those are capital projects that are already out.
Thank you, Jared, for that clarification.
Hey, Jared, could you say that again? You kind of broke up when you first started speaking.
Yeah, I believe those are capital projects that are in the CIP and planned for.
And the reason for the large difference, as Mr. Glover had pointed out, would be between 21 and then 20 compared to 21 and then going to 22.
Yes, also that they were trying to utilize any of their excess revenues for fiscal year 21 to purchase any of the capital equipment that they requested for fiscal year 22, as we asked most departments to do, all departments to do, if they had excess funds in fiscal year 21 to fulfill their capital requests for fiscal year 22. So they removed about 600,000 alone of capital requests that they had previously submitted for fiscal year 22.
That would be a lot of money in that budget, huh? For them to find almost $4 million.
Yes, sir. And I believe I'm going to leave this to Jared to answer, but I believe that they have fulfilled some of their capital projects as well. Would that be an accurate statement, Jared?
Yes, there has been some that finished up, and then there's some of these are new projects that we have a 5-year plan that are in process.
Thank you.
All right. Are there any other questions about any of the other funds that I may answer for council?
Any questions? I don't see any hands up.
No, either. Sarah, do you see anybody?
All right, great. Thank you, Ms. Harriet. Great job. So where do we go to from here? Is it back to Pinky, or we now look at entertaining a motion to pass the budget as is? And again, this is something we will get it to council and have 3 readings. So I'm sure there's going to be some changes or things that we can look at, especially after we saw the elected officials' budgets. Whitney, do you have anything else to say, or Pinky, do you have anything else to add at this point, or Ms. Richland, is there anything else that you'd like to add before we move on?
Yes, sir. If I may, just a quick.
Sorry.
No worries. All right. I just want to mention to you that this current budget does not reflect the availability of the American Recovery Act monies, simply because we have not yet formulated a county or regional plan for how those funds will be expended. So at some point in fiscal 22, we will likely come back before you and request the creation of a special revenue fund by which we can track all of the eligible expenditures for we call it ARPA purposes. We just do not have those at the moment because Treasury just last week issued guidance on how those monies could be spent. And we would like to come together with the other municipalities and counties in our region, kind of with one voice and one accord, present our desired projects. Much of it is for infrastructure related capital outlay. So that piece is still coming, and I just simply wanted to just to put that on your radar that because it's such a substantial amount of money, and we're still working on a plan that we would come back to you at some point in fiscal 22 for that purpose.
Also, Chairman Lawson, if I may, I would like to really acknowledge all of the help and all departments and elected officials that have been super helpful in this budget process. As Whitney mentioned earlier, it was a really very short amount of time to put this budget together for next fiscal year. So I just wanted to take a moment to thank everyone for working with us as we all go through our growing pains. It's been really nice to get to know everyone throughout the county.
Thank you, Pinky. Yes, I know how hard you've worked, as well as the rest of the finance staff with Hayes and Whitney. Mr. Passman, I see your hand up. Go ahead if you'd like to say something.
Yes, before we make the motion, I have a technical question for either Mr. Greenway or our attorney, Mr. Taylor. In doing so, we would be making a motion at the Finance Committee to recommend to the full council a first reading of the fiscal year 22 budget ordinance. And would that have to be done by title only, since we do not have definitive information as yet?
Definitive information on what subject?
Mill rate. We're not 100% sure of what the total budget is going to be. So should it be done by title only?
No, sir. I believe that you can move to recommend approval of the budget as it exists. We do have a draft ordinance that will have some tweaking, and you do have the budget notebook and the lines you just went through. So I don't think title only is necessary.
Okay, very good. I just wanted to make sure how we would word, such an action item.
We may ask you to amend on second reading, Chairman Passman, but right now we're ready to proceed with recommendation for first reading as drafted.
Okay.
All right, any other questions before we ask for someone to make a motion to approve what we've seen and move it to first reading of council? Seeing no questions, is there anyone that would like to make that motion?
I'll be happy to make that motion.
I'll second it.
All right, so it's been first and seconded. Is there any discussion at this point with regards to the budget? All right, is there any reason for us to do a roll call? Is there any objection? I see no objection, hear no objection. So at this point is approved without objection. All right, let's move on then. And I know this has been a long meeting. Do we need to take a 5-minute break? Let's take a. It's 4:14. Let's come back at 4:20, and we appreciate our folks that are presenting today and their patience. So again, we're going to take a break and come back at 4:20. waiting for everyone to come back on. I'm sure we'll have we'll start here at 4:22, which is in 1 minute. All right, it's 4:22 this evening, and have our country, and who would be who's going to be on it?
Oh, sorry, I was just going to say quickly that's Mary Carnes, and she's online.
On behalf of the college, we will do so any day. But on behalf of Dr. Goff and the faculty and staff at the Technical College of the Low Country, we appreciate your time here today. More importantly, we want to thank you for your continued support of the college and your annual appropriation, which is vitally important to our operations. Today, I just want to tell you a little bit about how we're emerging out of COVID and how we're growing and how every day we're becoming an even better community college. Emerging out of COVID, gratefully. Overall, we probably lost about $3.7 million in total losses. Like all institutions of higher education, we did receive HERF funds or are receiving HERF funds, and that's the Higher Education Emergency Relief Funds. We expect to receive in total $9.3 million. Of that, about $4 million needs to be given directly to students. We can recover from our revenue loss and our related COVID expenses, and the balance can then be used for additional student financial aid. We can go to the next one, Sarah. Sorry for the lack of a title, but this is enrollment. As you can see, from fall 28 to fall 2019, and actually fall 27, but it's not on the chart, we were seeing steady enrollment growth. We expected that for fall 2020, and because no one expected COVID. Overall, we had a 17% decrease in enrollment, and that is college-wide. So for us, that's the accredited side. It's the associate degrees. It's the associate degree in business. And on the continuing education side, those are the programs like CDL, welding, certified nursing assistant. So those two areas combined, we saw about a 17% loss in enrollment. We're projecting to start the recovery for fall 2021, seeing most of that recovery being in dual enrollment and in continuing education. And we'll talk a little bit more about what's driving enrollment in continuing education in a bit. No, that's fine. You can go to the next one. Thanks, Sarah. Want to talk a little bit about what we're doing, how we're growing, and how we continue to serve our community and our economy. Community colleges in particular are foundational to the local economy. They're foundational to business expansion and retention. So I want to share a little bit here about some growth areas. The Beaufort Mather Campus Health Sciences program expansion, of course, the Culinary Institute of the South, cybersecurity programs, and then ManuFirst SC and Gear. You can go to the next one, Sarah. Thank you. Beaufort Mather Campus Health Science program expansions. About 40% of our students are enrolled in an allied health science program. There is increasing student demand and there's increasing community demand for the health science programs and health science occupations and careers in our area. To meet this demand, we're renovating 3 buildings in order to create about 8,000 square feet of new academic space. So we can do 2 things. We can expand existing programs, such as nursing, radiology technology, surgical tech, and we can bring on new programs, such as occupational therapy and pharmacy technology. And this council has made this happen. The Culinary Institute of the South. You know, the college, the Technical College of the Low Country serves the two bookends of our economy, which is healthcare and it's travel and tourism. So the Culinary Institute of the South, as you can see, is in a very active construction site right now. It will be completed in August. We will start in, students will start to come into the building in about mid-October. We planned to open it with about 150 students. Initially, it has a 300 student capacity. Cybersecurity. So congratulations to the community leadership that through their good work has successfully received the Department of Defense dollars to support a community-wide cybersecurity education initiative. We're proud to be a part of it. Two pillars of this program for the Technical College of the Low Country. One is a cybersecurity associate degree program. Associate degree programs takes a little longer to launch because of the accreditation process. So that would be about an 18 months from now when we will have that standing up. But what community colleges do best is to respond quickly when they can. And so this summer or early fall, hopefully working in partnership with Beaufort Digital Corridor, we will be offering cybersecurity certificates. These are stackable certificates for local IT workers, for local businesses that need this IT cybersecurity within their operations. These will be 3 to 6 week certificates for IT professionals working locally to learn how to support their business's network, to identify security threats, vulnerabilities, and how to respond appropriately. ManuFirst SC and GEAR. ManuFirst SC, Manufacturing First South Carolina. This is a state-recognized manufacturing certificate designed to provide South Carolina residents entry-level skills into a manufacturing employment. GEAR funds, free training in high-demand career fields like CDL. Manufacturing First is free to any resident of South Carolina, and it will be provided through the Technical College of the Low Country. With that are the GEAR funds. GEAR stands for Governor's Emergency Education Relief. What the GEAR funds are providing is free training, free CDL, free welding, free CNA. That cybersecurity certificates that I mentioned at the previous slide, this will cover the training costs for the cybersecurity certificates. So local IT professionals, the cost of instruction, their training costs will be covered by the GEAR funds. Since January, GEAR has provided over $124,000 in order to cover the cost of training for almost 50 area residents in CDL and welding and CNA and more. I just want to emphasize again, all this is free. The Manufacturing First is free and the GEAR funds are free. So one of the things that the state supports, when the state offered support for this area to be able to offer ManuFirst SC and the other GEAR funds, it was more evidence that in our local economy, industrial training is increasingly in demand. Our challenge as a college is that we don't have the facilities to meet that demand. We're handicapped by the lack of facilities, and when the college is handicapped, the community is handicapped, and our economy is handicapped. Our Vice President for Administration has been working with the County Task Force on the American Recovery Plan funds, and we want to thank you for your support. The Workforce Training Center that we have been trying to build since I think 2016 has been submitted to Representative Mace for consideration. So thank you. County Council is the primary investor in the Technical College of the Low Country. your appropriations. It's your investment that the Culinary Institute of the South is here for the community. And we just want to remind you that we are a good investment. 92% of our graduates live here, work here, they raise their families here, and they pay local taxes. And since 1968, more than 87,000 students has come through the Technical College of the Low Country, representing 4 counties, Beaufort, Jasper, Hampton, and Colleton. And our annual economic impact is $129 million a year and growing. Last one. And I just want to end where I started by saying thank you. Thank you very much for your support of higher education, for your commitment to the Technical College of the Low Country, and for your commitment to the University of South Carolina, Beaufort. Your support of TCL and of higher education makes a difference in our communities. And please know how much it is appreciated by Dr. Goff, his leadership team, and the faculty and staff and students of the Technical College of the Low Country. Thank you for your time.
Ms. Carnes, great presentation. Does anyone have any questions for Ms. Carnes while we have them here? And Mr. Hershon, go ahead.
Thank you. And thank you for that presentation. That was really cool. It's great to see the direction that TCL is going, and it almost seems like the value that TCL is bringing has almost been exacerbated by the pandemic. It's just, just a great direction that you're going. Really awesome. The question is, can you give us an update on how the HVAC program is doing? I'm particularly interested in that one.
Yes, I'm glad you asked about it. We meant to launch, the launching of the HVAC program at the New River campus was postponed almost a year because of COVID. I think that some of you may know that Minkledorf Incorporated basically funded that, has all the equipment. Beginning of this year, January, we hired another faculty member in HVAC, Barry Keever, and he's charged. I refer to him as the change agent that is going to build the HVAC program at the New River campus. Overall, it's coming back on. We were still primarily online through spring. So we're working hard to kind of rebuild those student populations. Those programs were hurt really hard during because you can't teach HVAC online. It's a hands-on program. And often with our students, when we lose them, when they have to take an off-ramp for whatever reason, getting back to the on-ramp is particularly hard. So Vice Chair Horvishon, I would say that we're not at the numbers that we want. We're about 22 students right now. Would like that to be 50 between both campuses, but we see that returning. We also have talked about taking HVAC is on the credit side. So that means they have to take gen eds because it's a college degree. About taking HVAC and putting it on the continuing education side. That takes it down from, let's say, 60 hours to less than 30. And it becomes just a workforce certificate. So we're talking about doing that too.
Great, thank you very much. Any other questions? I can tell you that my son actually goes to TCL, and he has for the past 2 years. So we believe in the program. I think all 3 of my children in the past have gone to TCL and supplemented their college education. So we appreciate your time. Again, I asked one more time, any other questions?
York has a question.
York, and I see Alice, your hand's up as well. So go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Collins, talk to me more about the expansion, the 26 million. What's your strategy on that? I think the Manu First and Gear program will really help a lot of people. So help me understand when you will think that will happen as far as the building and the program being on campus.
Yeah, I wish I could give a definitive answer to that, Councilman Glover. It's it's a high ticket item. Really, I think since 2016 or maybe earlier, first at the state level, and just to give some history to that, got a little bit of traction at the state level. Started with an incremental funding, maybe in 2017 of $3.5 million, but never funded it after that at the state level. So that $3.5 million was basically depreciating on a shelf. We asked through our legislation if they would reappropriate that money so that we take the 3.5. The 3.5 was going to come nowhere close to building a workforce training center, but we could use that to expand the health sciences here at the Beaufort Mather campus. So that is where the funding comes from. The first state increment in the Regional Workforce Training Center back in 2016, 2017, never any funding after that at the state level. We asked to be reappropriated last fiscal year so that we can at least do some good here at the Beaufort Mather campus and expand those programs. We're looking at what might be available through all the recovery money. And, I think all of us, it's almost like there's just a lot of money out there. There's a lot of regulation tied to it, but we're hoping that maybe in the community growth funds there might be some money there to do the Regional Workforce Training Center. However, I will tell you that it has become urgent enough that what we have done is to scale it down. We have to respond. So there's 26 million, but how can we respond and what might be a sizable bite? And we have and I don't know what you call them. I often call them the erector set buildings. They're kind of the industrial, shells for 3.9 million that can be put up at the New River campus. It can expand the HVAC, which is what we want to do. It can be space for industrial maintenance. It can expand welding, and we can expand the CDL program, the Commercial Driver's License Program. It takes about $400,000 to put in a CDL pad. So for 3.9, we could act immediately. That doesn't take away the larger building that we need in the future. But it is absolutely, we cannot take the students that want welding because we don't have the space. The Commercial Driver's License Program. We're trying to run an evening and a daytime program to accommodate the students. We need heavy equipment operators, industrial maintenance technicians. So
I appreciate.
Yeah.
I appreciate what you just said, and I would ask that even when you start looking at the 26 mil, if you're looking at phasing in and doing exactly what you just said, I would definitely support that effort. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. I did promise you, Councilman, that I would not ask you for money today.
Alice, I think you had a question.
Well, just to comment, if she could briefly tell us about the success of the dual enrollment program, it just seems to grow and grow from what I understand.
It really does, and we see that. We have a great partnership with the Beaufort County School District in particular. They have been partners in the Culinary Institute of the South. And what the Beaufort County School District, as you know, is expanding their CATE, Career and Technical Education programs. And that's really where we're plugging in now. Right before the fall semester, before the spring COVID semester, we had the first dual enrollment construction, building and construction students here on campus. We have a great picture of those students. That program, of course, had to stop and is coming back online. We're going to do HVAC dual enrollment beginning this fall. We're working on the health sciences dual enrollment to stand that up too. I can't speak highly enough of Karen Gilbert and what she's doing in those areas. But this is opportunity so that these high school students can get the certification beyond high school that they need but in a very, very short time, go right into our workforce, which is what we need them to do.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Ms. Carnes? Again, we appreciate everything that you all do. We're happy to be here to support you. I think that, again, you and President Goff have done a great job with everything that you're doing. And I think that we need to give some commendations to the councils before us who went ahead and put in place to have a millage rate, so that way you could have a tax amount that you knew what was coming every year. It wasn't something you had to come back and ask us for money every year. So again, I commend, I think Stu was part of that. Some other folks have been around that they put that in place years ago to keep funding for both TCL and also USCB. So again, thank you for your presentation today. And I promise next time we'll get you in earlier and not make you do this on the marathon finance committee meeting. But again, thank you, Ms. Carnes, and the rest of your folks at PCL.
Thank you, Council.
All right, and so next presentation, we have a USCB. I think Dr. Panu is here to help us through this. And again, Dr. Panu, I want to apologize for the lengthy meeting today, but again, we want to definitely get you in and hear what you had to say. So the floor is yours. We thank you and appreciate everything that you do here for our community.
Thank you, Chairman Lawson and council members and Administrator Greenway. Thank you so much for the opportunity to update you on the activities and progress that you have made possible because of the support that USCB has received from County Council, and to highlight some ongoing requests. I just again appreciate that opportunity tremendously. We are absolutely grateful for it, and we learned a lot sitting through all of the marathon sessions, so no need to apologize for that as well. I'm joined here by my colleague, Beth Patrick, who serves as our Vice Chancellor for Business and Operation and Finances and IT. So she is both the CFO and the CBO at our institution, and she's done a tremendous work for us for the past couple of years that she's been here. So if there's any questions coming up that we need to both address, we will be happy to do that during the course of the presentation. Next slide, please. Are we controlling the slide? Okay, thank you so much. So as most of you know, we are absolutely dedicated to academic excellence and to experiential learning, and we carrying that out through the distinctive programs that we offer throughout the entire county, southern and northern Beaufort, on the 3 campuses that are represented, the main campus being the Bluffton campus, the historic Beaufort campus, and the Hilton Head being the newest campus, and gives us the opportunity to serve the entire community and beyond. Next slide, please. We cannot not talk about what happened last year. It came February of 2020. We all had to pivot in order to address the challenge presented by the pandemic. And the response started really in February of 2020. We had to address the health and safety concerns that were brought on by the pandemic, put in place a lot of protocols and measures to try to ensure that we can address that. But along with those came also lots of challenges that we can kind of put on both the academic front as well as on the financial front. We incurred unexpected cost in mitigating the measures that we had put in place for that, PPE, testing, and lots of other things that you all well acquainted with in terms of our typical response to the pandemic. We we lost a lot of money by having to reimburse for housing and for meals and other auxiliary functions as we had to pivot essentially in the way that we were delivering instruction. It also meant that over the long term, there were some consequences with regard to enrollment. And we saw that deeply this past fall, where we took a loss of about 6.2 in our enrollment growth. Thankfully, some of the federal funding that we received have been very helpful in helping us mitigate against some of the challenges that we have faced with the COVID, both in terms of reimbursement expenses, expenses that were associated with just equipment and testing, etc., as well as looking at expenses that were due to loss of revenue. And we'll talk just a little bit more about that. Next slide, please. Our strategies were to be broken down in both short terms and long terms, both in dealing with the financial matters as well as in the academic matters. And of course, we've already talked a lot about the measures that we put in place with regard to health and safety, which really worked very well for us. We were amongst the lowest in terms of impact to the institution, both for student body as well as the entire community of faculty and staff. Next slide, please. Here, I want to recap a little bit of the history of funding for higher education, just so that we can have a tremendous appreciation for the funding that we are receiving locally from the county. What you will see here is a capture of the decade from 2008 to 2018, and of course, the recession being one of the biggest marker of this particular period. And up until now, over that period of time, we still, from the standpoint of the funding that we're receiving from the state, and I'm talking about an average here for the state of South Carolina for public higher institution overall, behind in terms of the contribution that the state made to the overall cost of higher education per student. And you can see those numbers even more vividly on the next slide, please. Yes, per FTE. Next slide, please. Okay. And here, what's particularly visually stunning is if you can see the portion of the student contribution versus the state, where the state contribution appropriation per FTE, full-time equivalent, is showcased in blue, and the net tuition was in green. Back in 1992, and you look at that comparison to where we are in 2017, you see the reversal essentially of the cost of higher education to the student. And that's largely pointing out to the smaller contribution essentially that we have experienced coming from the state. And compound this for USCB has been the fact that we are the youngest comprehensive university in the state of South Carolina, which came about largely through the efforts of the community. And we have had to struggle to make up for what we call parity funding, meaning when we compare ourselves to the other comprehensive, we were the lowest funded per FTE relative comparison to others. Thankfully, our delegation, legislative delegation, has been really hard at work to try to bring us to parity. But you can see that compounding both the level of support from the state and together with the fact that our level of particular appropriation was amongst the lowest, it has meant everything to us that we have the support locally from the county, and that gives you perspective, so much so that it's really helped us to be the lowest tuition amongst the comprehensive in the state of South Carolina, something that we hold very dearly to because we know the population we're serving, and we want to ensure that we continue to provide access and affordability where necessary. Next slide, please. So it's been stated earlier, and I want to reemphasize that as again, that the support, especially the millage-based approach to supporting the university, has made a tremendous difference, and we are so appreciative and want to thank you and hope to continue on that course as you will see the report on what it's enabling us to be able to do. Next slide, please. Here is just a capture historically of the level of support that we have received, and want to give kudos once again to all of the leaders who went to bat to ensure that there was a millage-based approach to supporting us, and as well as a bottom floor in cases when times are very difficult for everyone. Next slide, please. So here, before I move on to talk about some of the successes that you have made possible for USCB, I want to acknowledge the importance and the commitment that we have in our own mission and vision to be not only relevant, but to build on the strength of our community and to leverage on that strength to continue to grow, whether we're talking about workforce needs, whether we're talking about new initiatives that are really propelling us upward economically. We are dedicated, and it's embedded in our mission, and it's very much in line with the mission for the county. Next slide, please. We currently have over 713 students in our fall enrollment that are from Beaufort County. And in our case, perhaps unlike TCL, we tend to give you numbers that are very close and reflecting the full-time equivalent in terms of numbers. So that's a huge contribution there. And we have 90 high school dual enrollment. We are seeing tremendous growth with regard to our dual enrollment, even though I have to say it's not financially at the same rate as the regular students. We do feel very much committed to being able to meet that need because it is truly serving our students and our community. We have, as you know, very active OLLI program for the Lifelong Learning Institute, roughly 1675 participants or members of the OLLI right here in Beaufort County. And we have about 196 Beaufort County residents who are here. I've talked in terms of partnerships, our partnership with the school system, dual enrollment again being a highlight there, but also our education program providing student-teacher interns and K through 12 teacher tuition discount that we do provide, particularly now that we have launched the new Masters of Education and Literacy program, and that's that's been a need that we've responded to, and we're seeing really a very strong start of that particular program. Again, attesting to the need that's being met there. Okay, next slide, please. I want to talk about the focus that we have on helping our students succeed. That is the sole singular dedication that you will find amongst our faculty, our staff here, our dedication to helping our students succeed. What you see highlighted here is the student who just graduated, Antonia Quintero, who was serving as the vice president for the Student Government Association. She was a successful competitor for the Washington Semester Program. And the Washington Semester Program is extremely competitive in the state of South Carolina. Only a handful of institutions actually do get students to successfully make it there. And not only that, for instance, Columbia does get a large share of students, but they all typically come from the honors program in Columbia. And USCB has been successful in sending Washington semester students 4 out of the last 5 years. We've had at least one Washington semester student go there. And Antonia is just the latest example. And as she has graduated, she's going to be returning to work for Congressman Clyburn's office. And I should also mention that USCB has, for the second year in a row, garnered the prize of being recognized as a top Fulbright producing institution. And again, really attesting not only to faculty, but also to students and to the kind of work that is taking place here and the recognition of that. Faculty have received numerous awards. Just earlier today, one of our colleagues was being recognized in Columbia by the governor's office for the work that was doing in terms of research. This past year alone, we have nearly doubled our research and grants activity. And that's also reflecting the level of engagements that we have with students when we give them experiential learning opportunities. It's not just internship, it's also research, it's service learning, it's programs such as study abroad and other opportunities that really enhances not only the education, but the credentials that they have. May 1st, and actually April 30th of this past April here, and May 1st, we had a total combined of 5 commencement ceremony during which we graduated over 305 students. A real testament again for the kind of activity that's going on and the focus that we have particularly with student success. So really proud of that, and we really look forward to continue to build on that particular success. Next slide, please. And of course, we are looking to continue to expand. We were the PI, the principal investigator on the cybersecurity grant that will allow us to collaborate across multiple institutions, TCL and Colonel Parker and just a number of partners to really leverage on the opportunities that is presented with cybersecurity. It's multidimensional. It holds a high future in terms of demands, in terms of jobs. Marine biology, marine science, nursing expansion. I mentioned already the Masters of Education and Literacy. we're really excited about building on those programs and other programs that are going to reflect the needs and the demands for our area. And we're constantly monitoring that and looking at that. We were excited to have been invited to be part of the Peach Belt Conference as part of NCAA Division II Athletics. And that's the first step in multi-step processes that hopefully we hope will culminate in our transitioning from our current affiliation with NAIA to NCAA Division II. And Peach Belt Conference in particular is where a lot of other institutions that are peers that we will be really competing with are, and we're really excited about the potential that lies there in the future. And with that, as I've indicated to all of you in the past presentations when we were looking at capital projects, we're looking hopefully to add new sports, including men and women basketball and women's volleyball, particularly as we make more progress with the convocation center that we have presented to you previously. Next slide, please. So before I say some more about the convocation center where we stand, I really want to reiterate again our support for the mission of the county and the contributions that we feel that we make to the development of the workforce and lifelong learning, not only here but really beyond, and our partnership with the school here, both with education and other engagement that we have dual enrollment. And we really are exploring, and we're excited about that, exploring the possibility of a STEM center. And we will be, Superintendent Rodriguez and I, planning to make a visit soon to have that conversation and hopefully taking strides as we move forward. Next slide, please. So with regard to the Convocation Center, all the studies that have come in, you're partly supported for us to engage in, resulted in phase one being estimated at $48 million, and the proposal being one of state contributing some and we getting some support from county. And of the $24 million that the state is supposed to contribute, thus far we have accumulated as of right now, assuming that we get finalized the budget at the state level, $12.3 million that would go towards this convocation. And we do hope that there will be potentially even a little bit more as states has additional funding that they might be looking at earmarking toward capital projects. And so we continue to look to you for support on this initiative. Some of the lessons that we have learned during the course of this pandemic have simply reinforced the value of this facility. We have hosted a lot of testing. We have talked about mass vaccinations. We've talked about emergency type opportunities. We've talked about large events that such a facility would be able to facilitate not only for USCB, but for a lot of the needs that are reflected throughout the county. So we do believe that this is a major infrastructure related project that really would serve not only USCB, but our entire community very well. Next slide, please. So with that, let me just thank you. Thank you so much again for your support. Thank you for making it possible for us to serve the community the way that we are doing and partnering with you in every way moving forward. Would love any questions that you would have for us.
Any questions for Dr. Panu? I guess that's the good thing about going in a long marathon committee. No one has questions, Dr. Panu, but we appreciate everything that you do. I've got a daughter who is a USCB alumnus, and also my wife has graduated from USCB with her psychology degree. So we appreciate, and I know personally what it's like to have a family member and be part of the community and have them go to school there. So thank you. I cannot see everybody. Is there anybody that has any questions?
Not a question, just make a little quick statement to Dr. Vanille. Good to have you present to us. Just keep us apprised of the convocation process and funding, et cetera, as it unfolds itself.
Certainly will. You will hear from me again and again on that. So thank you.
Great. Anyone else before we let Dr. Panu go? Excellent as usual, Dr. Panu. So thank you so much. We appreciate everything you do. And obviously, you know how to contact any of us here if we can be of any more assistance to you. And again, thank you and your staff for everything that you've done for us. So thank you.
Thank you for all of your work. Appreciate that.
All right, great. So we have one more presentation coming up here, and let me just back up here and make sure I've got everything that we need. But I think from Mary Franzoni is.
Yes.
Oh, good. You're there. Great. You're stuck with us. So thank you for coming up, and I think that we have you next presenting for us. So let's not waste any time and let you go ahead and present everything you've got for the Palmetto Breeze.
Well, thank you. And I want to thank you, Chairman Lawson, and the County Council for the opportunity to present. And what I wanted to share my screen, so I don't know, somebody put that up. Here we go. Can I just share my screen?
Please, and thank you.
I'm not good at this. Look, all my people are gone. Here we go. I have it on my other monitor. Let me try again.
You're up. It's on.
You can see the presentation?
Yes, we can.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, I want to thank you for the opportunity to present the Palmetto Breeze update. And we appreciate the county's continued support of public transit in the region. See if it'll, I gotta click the right buttons. All right, we serve 7 commuter routes. We go to 5 counties, and we also do demand response routes in Beaufort and also over here on this side of the Broad. And what that means is people that need a ride that maybe the bus route doesn't go by their house or it isn't convenient, they call here and we dispatch different services and we pick people up for a door-to-door service. Here is our route map. And as you can see, we serve a huge area. It's 5 counties, over 3,000 square miles. In pretty much every one of the major thoroughfares throughout all these 5 counties, we pick up people that need to go to work and bring them mostly to Bluffton and Hilton Head. But, you know, they get off along the way. Some people get off on 170. There's people that get off in Ridgeland. They have figured out how to use us to get to their jobs. Some of our recent highlights with the pandemic, we did not miss a single day. We immediately got a backpack sprayer. As you can see, our utility on the right there is using the sprayer. What we learned after him suiting up like this every single day, several times a day, was that the chemicals really weren't that caustic and that he didn't really have to wear the suit. But we did in the beginning. We didn't know. The other thing that I thought was very amazing was our maintenance department made the shields that went in all the buses. And most of the transit systems went without and then paid about 5 times what we paid and had contractors put them in. And so our guys got right on it and got them in. We provided, we still provide masks in all the buses. We have hand sanitizer and we sanitize the buses every day. Also, the other thing that was really great is we got CARES Act money, as did all the transit systems in the country. And they were pretty generous in the with the CARES Act money. And with that, we managed to purchase 2 additional MCI motor coaches, the large buses. The state SCDOT had already given us money for 1 motor coach. We have 10 that need replacing. And so we received these 3 motor coaches in December, and they're in use right now, and it's made a huge difference in our reliability. Our other buses that we're using are 06 and 07 models, and they have 1 million+ miles on them. And you just never know what's going to break. So these 3 buses have really helped our reliability. The trolley has been such a crazy success story. Last year, we had a hard time even running the trolleys. We had a lot of issues with our employees getting sick and other things. So this year we started out and we're fare free, and we added a Mid-Island route, which goes to the Weston into Follyfield Road, where all the timeshares and villas are. And I will let you know, on Friday, we carried 475 passengers over 3 buses, but it's still an amazing amount of people. It's very successful. We now have had standing loads in the trolleys, which never happened before. So we're really proud that the trolleys have taken off. And let me remind everybody that as pretty as they are and as enjoyable as it is to ride our air-conditioned trolleys, the real pushing factor on putting trolleys on Hilton Head as public transportation was to alleviate the traffic. The traffic was pretty ridiculous for such a small island and so many people. And I think we're fulfilling our mission, and we're filling these trolleys up. And so it's worked out. Here's our route service. Let me see if I can get a mouse on here. I can. So this is Shelter Cove right here, and this is our transfer point. Going northward up to the Weston and Follyfield Road is our new route. All the services have 30-minute service. This route going to the south end, we've always had that, to Coligny. 2 buses run on this, and so a bus comes every 30 minutes. 1 bus runs on this route, and again, 30-minute service. They meet by Jane's and the Talbots in Shelter Cove. There's a little pull-off there, and that's our bus transfer station. So I would encourage anyone, if you're on Hilton Head, to try out the trolleys. It's a beautiful vehicle. They're nice and air-conditioned. It's a great view, and the drivers make sure to let everybody know about all the local attractions along the way. We are also starting public transportation for the first time in Bluffton on a fixed route system. Both the trolley and the Bluffton Breeze are part of our urban services. These are made available to this community as a result of us becoming a small urbanized area. Unfortunately, we wanted to start this service July 1st, but we, as well as all employers in the area, do not have enough employees. And we are doing everything we can to get drivers in here. And so we have delayed the start of the Bluffton Breeze until September 7th, which is the day after the trolley stopped running, because we plan to use those driver resources to get the next service up and running. We are certainly struggling to get drivers in, but we're doing the best we can. So Bluffton Breeze will start on September the 7th, and here are the routes that it'll serve. It's 2 routes, although you can't really see that here. But the point of this route, and again, what we're trying to do here is serve the higher residential areas, such as the apartments here and on Bluffton Parkway, Bluestone, Avalon Shore, so all these apartments in here, to the work sites, Tanger 1, Tanger 2, Walmart, Sam's. When you get up here to the Publix, there's a big medical building here, and that employs several hundred people, and the shopping center. Then we're going to come down to back to Bluffton Parkway, and we will be going out to the regional community park here that has the skate park, and I've been told indoor basketball. So that would allow for some recreational activities and service to this area. We do show this route. We're going to change this map going through the school road. Well, I had the pleasure of going through there right as school was letting out one day, and we sat a good 10 or 12 minutes. And we are not going to come this way. We're just going to come to the Bluffton Parkway and down to the regional park because we can't afford to let the buses get stuck like that. This route will come up to the Buckwalter place in here, which is, again, a huge employer. We have all of the retail stores, the Publix. We have the new Kroger's there. TCL has a campus. We have the call center there for, I can't think of their name right now, but a big call center. Just a lot of employment activity in this area, and this is our transfer point. The second route will serve Buckwalter, and we will go into Berkeley Place on the way up to the theater and to all of the retail that people work at. And we come out and we're going to stop in front of Bojangles, who was one of our early supporters to get public transit. Our turnaround is going to be at the Vineyard on Buckwalter. They asked us to come in and turn around to help bring employees there. We will leave from the Vineyard and go back to Berkeley Place, and then both ways we'll stop at Washington Square. Of course, you can't get in there now, but as soon as we can get in, this will be part of the route. We have the time on the route to serve Washington Square. It's just not developed enough for us to get in there. So we will be serving that. Then we'll come back to Buckwalter. And right now we're behind the Kroger. We're hoping we can make use of a soon to be built parking area back there as a bus transfer center. And so that we're going to run this, and it's hourly service. So if your bus comes by at 11, it'll come by every hour on the hour. Just, if you get it at 11:15, it'll be 12:15, 1:15, 2:15. So it'll be very easy for people to know what time the bus comes. And the service will be from 7 a.m. till 6 p.m. And so we're really looking forward to getting this going. It will be year-round service, and it'll start with a Monday to Friday. So that's going to be new, September the 7th. A lot of things we've done inside the organization since we became an urban property to prepare ourselves for growth. What we had when I came in was not a very workable situation, not very much office space. Just, we've done a lot. We've hired the people we need. We've done a renovation on the administration building and added offices. We brought in a mobile office for our operations center. Please go on palmettobreezetransit.com and check out our website. One of my essential hires was to get a marketing person who is fantastic and has redone our website and all our brochures, and answers all the social media. He does a fantastic job. We've also updated our hurricane emergency evacuation. We do the evacuation services for Beaufort County, and being that Beaufort and Jasper really are quite close together in where we serve all on 278 and 170, we are planned to begin offering our services for emergency evacuation to Jasper County as well, just so you know. And they would call the same call center, will use the same resources, and they will also share in the cost of the emergency evacuation program. I got a little ahead of myself. But anyway, we will be doing that for Jasper County. We will give them a cutaway to use, which we do on Hilton Head as well. These are cutaways, the smaller buses, and we'll give them one to use for everything west of 95, and they're going to pick up those people. And we will do east of 95 and just incorporate it into what we're already doing to go to the regional shelter. Hopefully not this year. We just recently got another grant opportunity came our way, and we were awarded the money to purchase 2 additional MCIs. We plan to order them in the next week or 2, and we'll probably get them by the end of the year. And so that's really great news for us. That would mean that we would have 5 of the 10 buses that we're trying to replaced. So it's huge. That will help ensure that we have the ability to bring commuters in for another 10 or 15 years. This is part of our master plan for future planning, and just so people get an idea of what we're looking at. It's probably not this year or next year, but coming soon, would be a route that goes across the bridges. And what we looked at in serving Hilton Head, the trolley works great for what we want the trolley to do. But for people that actually want to go to work, live in Bluffton, want to go to work in Hilton Head, or vice versa, it's complicated. And when you try to look at setting up permanent transit routes on Hilton Head Island, it's very difficult, just the layout of the island. And so we came up with this flex route circulator plan. And what that is that people would book in advance, at least a day in advance, and can book 2 weeks or 3 weeks in advance. And what we'll do is we'll set up schedules for our cutaways over on the north end of the island. And probably there'll be two, one going north, one going south. And in Bluffton as well, one or two flex buses as needed. And what that will do, what that allow us to do is to understand where people are trying to go. So let's say we have a group of people that go to the hospital every day. Well, if that's 10 people every day, and we always do that, and then we always go another way, we'll know in our next planning that that could be its own route because it has enough ridership. So prior to running some kind of flex route to understand who's going to ride and where they're going to go, we're really shooting in the dark trying to set up transit services. And so this concept, I think, is the smartest way to approach how to serve between Bluffton and Hilton Head across the bridge. And so we're going to try for that as funding allows and as we continue to grow. And this just shows you our combined budget. We're a $5 million budget at this point. We collect fares. We get a lot of federal money. The state mass transit funds, we'd like to get more of that. Our local match money, without the local match money, none of this would be doable. Our grants that we receive, both from the state and the federal, are reimbursed grants. And so we spend the money and we get back a percentage of it. So it is so important that our local communities and partners help us with this local match commitment so we can keep improving the services and keep providing transportation. The other thing that I always talk about, and I can't help but at least mention it, is that we really need dedicated funding to grow this into a robust transit system, such as the Comet in Columbia or CAT in Savannah or the system in Charleston. In order to really meet the needs of the community, as this community grows, we need to find a way to have permanent dedicated funding for our local match. This is just the rural side, and that's the commuter buses, not the Bluffton service and not the trolley service. And this shows you that we spend most of our money on the rural side. It costs a lot to run all those miles and to provide that transportation. The urban side, not so much. We get a smaller grant, and so we can only grow the urban side as big as the grants that come in, or if we got a dedicated funding source. So that's why I said in the future, we want to continue to grow the service. And this is our budget request. It's $338,928. And it's for the rural and for the urban. And this is the charts off of the letter that I sent. And what we do is on the rural side, we divvy up all the ridership and to look at what counties people originate from and how much of our ridership percentage that is. And then we look at how much match we need for the grant. And that's how we come up with how much we ask everybody for on the rural side and on the urban side. The urban side's a little different. We do it by population percentage. And that's probably going to change next year because these numbers came from the 2010 census. And we'll have new numbers for the 2020 census. So just so you know, that probably will change. But there is a methodology to how we ask for the match money. And that's my crew in October. We all got our pink on. Does anybody have any questions?
Mr. Chairman, I don't have a question. Just want to comment that I appreciate the particularly the Bluffton routing system, how you stay off of 278 as much as you can. I think that's a good planning right there. So I just want to make that comment. Would love to see a trolley system on the north side of Beaufort County. I know the numbers are not there, but let's keep the north side in mind.
Well, let
for
me tell
trolley
you
system.
about that.
Oh, go ahead.
If I
Feel
can
free.
get a minute. We have put in for a grant through, it's called RTAP, Rural Transportation Assistance Program. And they put out a call out for projects, and we put in for a project, and we're calling it Reboot. It's Reimagine Beaufort Transportation, and it's for north of the Broad. And we have great ideas, but we don't really have planning money on the rural side. So they're $100,000 grants. Fred and Ben helped me with it, and Debbie from Access Health. Everybody in the community got together, and we put this grant in, and we'll know on June 18th. And if indeed we got the grant, we have some big plans to roll that out and to really change up what we're doing in Beaufort, because it's dated, it's redundant, it's just not as efficient as we could be, but it's also a very big project to take on. So we're really hopeful that we'll get this grant money and come together, and we will certainly invite council to some of our planning sessions if you'd like to come in and see what we're doing. And we'll also have public input sessions, and so I'll make sure to keep you all informed.
I know it would probably be challenging if you do the planning to include the Hunting Island area, simply because of the loss of pocket space there, and so they don't have as many space for visitors. So a transit system would really help that and to keep that beach going. Thanks.
Yes, as far as Hunting Island, 2 years in a row, I was on standby to do a shuttle for them after Matthew because of the parking lot disappeared. And the 1 year we were ready to go, we had everything set up. It like rained every weekend, and so they didn't need us. And so if it gets busy and overcrowded again, we're ready to go and to provide shuttles on the weekends to Hunting Island.
If I could just, if I could point out one thing to Palmetto Breeze rep there is that we have these various pots of money. So if you need matching funds or any kind of planning money to go along with that grant, we would be certainly willing to talk to you all about getting council to approve an allocation from the ARPA funds and the other pots of money that we're getting for rural transportation. So.
Thank you for that. And it takes a village. And if we get this grant, we will be calling on everybody, because I just think we can do a lot more in Beaufort and serve the people and really improve our transportation.
Great. Any other questions for Mr. Pizzoni? Thank you for coming out. We appreciate all you do and the excellent service that you provide. It kind of goes unnoticed, I think, by a lot of people, but there's lots of people that really, really depend on it. So again, thank you. And thank you for being patient and waiting. And again, your importance is what we needed you to go today. So again, thank you for coming out.
Thank you.
All right. Again, I apologize. I didn't come close. I kind of blew Larry McKellen's 1 hour meeting out of the water today. So always use me as an example of going too long in meetings. And again, I never thought, but I didn't want to rush any of our important items or any of our important presenters today. I think what we are going to do, however, is because the executive session items are not urgent. They are important, but they're not urgent, that we are going to look at moving those to the caucus meeting on Monday, which can be handled at that time. We'll make sure we have enough time at that caucus meeting. Is that acceptable? Chairman Passman, is that something we can do, or what's your input or anyone else's input on that?
Yeah, we can do that, but you did just see the chat message that
Beaufort, Jasper, Hampton, Comprehensive
oh, that's right.
Yeah, they're here.
I forgot. Yes, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. Yeah, they are ready to present. So we do have one more presenter today. So we definitely will be moving the executive session items to Monday. But let's go ahead and have our next presentation.
I don't have to give a presentation. If you just give us the money, you don't need a presentation from us.
My kind of guy. There you go. But yes, sir.
Thank you.
Go ahead. The floor is
Thank you.
yours, and we appreciate humor at this time of the day. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll let Dr. Polk give a presentation. She is our interim chief medical officer, and Ms. Gloria Warren is here. But we can be brief. I think we gave you a summary of what we're doing about 6 weeks ago, or less than that. We just bring you up to date, and I'll let Dr. Polk do the presentation. Wouldn't take long.
Thank you.
All right. Oh, I'm going to change it because I'm a little bit shorter than he is. If I can share my screen, if that's okay. Let's see. All right. So we did come and talk to you all a few weeks ago. So I'll kind of blow through some of this. Beaufort, Jasper, Comp Health, just in summary, we are in the 3 counties, 9 center locations in those counties, 10 school-based health center locations, and then 3 mobile units. And we provide care from birth until, as well as dental services, radiology, and we have 5 pharmacies, and then 5 dental sites. Our total operational cost to provide medical services is $22 million annually. We serve over 17,000 patients and almost 100,000 annual patient visits. And we have a staff of more than 270 employees. These are our sites in Beaufort County. And the other services we provide are Ryan White services, or HIV care, to more than 290 patients in our area. And then we also have provide PrEP, which is pre-exposure prophylaxis to help prevent HIV. So this is our service area for Beaufort County. Of the patients that we serve, 61% come from Beaufort County. And that amounts to about over 10,000 patients. Within that, this is just the age breakdown. The majority are people aged 18 to 64, but we have a significant population over 65, and a quarter of our patients are children. This is kind of how it breaks down in terms of insurance. And one thing I want to show you is the self-pay and the special programs. So 45%, special programs is also uninsured. So self-pay and the special programs make up our uninsured. So 45%, or 4,894, Beaufort County patients were uninsured and that we saw. So the total charges for patients without insurance in Beaufort County is about $3 million. We collected with sliding scale fees and whatever patients could pay, about $800,000 of that. And that includes all medical services, dental, x-ray services, and lab services. Just a little bit about us during COVID. We gave you a presentation about what we've been doing during COVID. Drive-through testing in the community. We've changed our model from inside to outside with drive-up pharmacies, visits. We've got a lot of telehealth. We did an outdoor migrant camp in St. Helena. And then we've done on-site, drive-through, and mobile vaccine clinics. And I'll highlight a few of those, but these are the patients that we tested by county. About 50% came from Beaufort County just over the past year. And then these are the vaccine events. So since we got the vaccine in January, and this is information I don't think we shared before, the ones in red are all the ones in Beaufort County. So we had 2 events in St. Helena, first and second doses. Our Chelsea location, which is in Okeechobee, had 3 days where we were doing drive-through here. And then we went out to Palmetto Dunes because we have changed our focus. So before, large events worked, right? And so the hospitals were doing thousands of people. We were doing 300 or 400 people. But that's changed. The people who really, really wanted it have gotten the vaccine. So now we're down to people who kind of want it, but they're not, it's not easy for them. So we changed our focus. We are going out to businesses, so some of the resorts. We found that some of our patients lived up there, and we wanted to see if we could help with that. And then we knew there were a lot of people who were here on visas because a lot of our farm workers are here on visas. And so We went to Palmetto Dunes. We also went to Hilton Head, the Cherry Hill School that's adjacent to the St. James Baptist Church, and did an event there. We have some more events in process on the Hilton Head side, and then also for our farm workers, because migrant season is here. Starting June 1st through July 2nd, we are going to be seeing patients at night, which is our usual night clinic that we start seeing patients at 7 and go until. And we're going to do some vaccine events there for people who haven't gotten vaccinated yet. We're up to over 9,000 doses. This was May 10th, so we're over 9,000 doses of vaccine so far. And this is the breakdown. Beaufort County makes up about 60%. And then if you look at the patients by race, 69% were African American, 20% were white, and then there's a bunch of unknown people who just didn't say what they were. And then by ethnicity, about 11% are Hispanic or Latino. Contrast that to the patients we serve, about 50% are African American, about 27% are Hispanic or Latino. So we know that there's some outreach we are continuing to do with the Hispanic community. The year ahead, you can expect we had about 5,000 less patients over last year. 5,000 patients who did not come for a visit in 2020 that came in 2019. We got to get those folks back in. We know that, their health is affected. We know that, just really trying to get that outreach. So that's where we have our community outreach. We have a new mobile unit, and we're going to be out in the community a lot more. We're still doing our COVID vaccines. They're at all of our sites now, and including community events. So every day at Beaufort Jasper, you can get a vaccine. Expanding telehealth, and then doing something that we needed during COVID, remote patient monitoring. This is actually sending devices home with patients. So whether it's a blood pressure cuff or a glucometer or scale, to monitor the patients in their home. So many times we would do telehealth visits and people only had a phone that they could call. They might not even have video. But we didn't have their vital signs. We couldn't really know what was going on with them other than what they told us. So remote patient monitoring is what we're expanding to this year. And then doing more diabetes. And this is just our vaccine locations and upcoming events. I think.
Yeah, that's it in a nutshell as what we're trying to do. As Dr. Poke said, trying to at least get those patients back in. But in order for us to sustain what we have been doing, we are requesting an additional $175,000 from the county to do those things. This is our first request in about 7 years. We've had at the same level of funding from Beaufort County, but to continue those programs, at least try to get those things done, we do need additional support. And I think we've done a schedule. I think I'm okay with the events and on a regular basis. And again, that's what we sustain those things. As Dr. Poke said, the hospital and the hospitals have slowed down. And you see now with Walgreens, some of the pharmacies, but I think we definitely will continue what we've been doing to get to those rural residents. That's it in a nutshell from us, and I'll be happy to answer if you have any questions, but this is additional what we're asking for from the county.
Are there any questions from anybody?
Just quickly, Mr. Gardner, when you look at 175,000, is that to fund the program for a year, or is that to fund the program, the vaccination for a month?
No, it's for about a year, Mr. Glover. What we're trying to do, what we've done in the past, is a separate team. I mean, we put together with the pharmacist staff, and they go out, and that's what we know is costs us each time we go out with the entire support team. That's extended hours, additional overtime for them. That's what it's going to cost us to get to do it for an entire year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions from anybody? Mr. Gardner, where else do you get funding from besides Beaufort County?
It's DHHS, Department of Health and Human Services. We get some funding from Jasper and also funding from the state.
Okay. So you've your 175,000 that you're requesting additional, you've made that request to our finance department, and that has been sent to them.
Yes, sir.
And obviously, we like to see, as you can tell from our previous discussions, we like to see backup documentation. So again, anything you can get to them that will help us in our decision. Obviously, we are a big supporter, want to continue to support as much as we can. We appreciate what you do. So again, we'll definitely look at that and do whatever we can to fulfill your wish.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
And any other questions before we let Dr. Gardner and Pokey go? Again, thank you so much for taking time, and I apologize. I almost skipped over you after this long day. You guys waited patiently, and I promise this will never happen to you again. So again, thank you. I'll let you go first next time. So, and thank you so much. We do appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. So as I mentioned previously, we're going to move the executive session items to the caucus next Monday. I know we have a busy caucus next Monday. However, Sarah, is that a problem to do that with FOIA? No?
We have plenty of time.
Okay. All right, good. So that is the plan. We will be getting out. I do want to emphasize that we will be sending out, Joe's going to, Mr. Passman's going to go ahead and add the public defender's budget to the existing elected officials budgets we have, revise that, get that out to you. I'd like everyone to look at it, go through it, and if you have questions, send them as written questions under each elected official's title to Sarah. She will compile those, and then we'll get those to each elected official and give them a timeline of when they'd like to have them get back to us. They don't have to answer questions unless they want to. We're doing this as a request, but again, it'll help us as opposed to bringing them in and putting them under the bright light and asking them to ask questions in front of us, which will help them to expedite everything. I know that we had a lot of information today that was came about at the last minute, some changes to things. So I think our plan at this point is that we will try to load that information as updated and additional information to the website whenever we get that information. It'll just be as, I think, a second link. Or if anyone needs the information, we'll probably have it compiled by tomorrow. They can email me at markl@bcgov.net, and I will make sure that I send out everything that we had today that was not part of our backup information, again, to make sure that everyone has it. There's nothing that we're trying to hide or nothing that we don't have. Sarah, is that a problem with us doing that or getting that put together?
No, sir. I was just going to say I already started making all of the documents instead of Excel sheets. I'm making them PDFs, and I was just going to fold them in one behind each other, so it could be one document versus y'all receiving multiple documents in an email. And we'll find a spot on the website once I can talk to our webmaster in the morning to where we can house it.
Okay, that'd be great. That'd be good. Is there anything else that anyone has? And again, I appreciate your patience, and I apologize for me not having this better prepared and not realizing how long each of our presentations were going to go today. Anything else anyone has for me? Or financial committee?
You done good.
Now you're making up to me. I understand that. All right, York. I appreciate that. All right. So again, I am sorry that we have been at this now for 3 hours and 45 minutes. I should have listened to staff and kept it at 1 o'clock, but still would be 3 hours and 45 minutes. So our meeting is officially adjourned. Thank you so much. Again, I appreciate everyone's patience, and I appreciate everything we've done. And thank you to the staff, finance staff, and Eric. You guys have done an incredible job. So, well, thank you all.
I just want to say, hey, Fred, I see you've hung in there with us this whole time.